whole thing fall apart really quickly. And then all of a sudden, nobody's got any food. So yeah, okay, so you can have dried and tinned stuff like that, but you can't have frozen stuff anymore, and you can't have fresh stuff anymore. So life becomes extremely difficult without electricity. That's before you even consider the fact that the water system will switch off if there are sustained power cuts in a city like Kharkiv. End result: 1.5 million people can no longer live in the city they call home, and they will have to go somewhere else. Where will they go? Well, they'll have to go west, won't they? And they'll have to throw themselves on the mercy of the Ukrainian state. Ukrainian state is a little busy right now because there's a bit of a war on. Maybe you've heard of it. The Russians invaded a couple of years ago, and that's causing all sorts of disruption. So, Ukrainian state probably not best equipped to deal with an extra 1.5 million internally displaced persons. So they're going to turn to their friends in Europe for help. Where are these people most likely to end up? Well, Europe somewhere, probably mostly Poland and a bit Germany and a bit Czech Republic. Um, what's that going to look like? Well, every refugee that is hosted by a foreign country is another user of that country's resources. We're not talking just food and water. We're talking accommodation, medical services, above all, I guess, money, education services. Like every extra person has this little impact. And what that does is it means there's less to go around. What does that do? Well, it chips away at political goodwill, right? It means that the politicians who are sensitive to public opinion may find themselves facing grumbles from their constituents about all of these extra Ukrainians they're having to put up, notwithstanding the enormous amount of goodwill there is in Europe for Ukraine. Um, it's just a little chink in the armor of our solidarity and unity that we could quite easily do without. So what's the impact of this? Well, as I said, just a tiny bit less goodwill potentially. And so a little bit less goodwill, a little bit less solidarity means a little bit less support for Ukraine, conceivably. Worst case scenario, the Western alliance starts to split. Now, this is a known MO for Putin. He likes causing refugee crises. He does it all over Africa. He does it all over the Middle East quite deliberately, causes civil wars, stokes ethnic tensions, creates massacres with his Wagner proxies. It's it's something that he does, and he knows that he does this deliberately because he knows that Europe is politically vulnerable to refugee influxes. So it's a way of disuniting us. It's a way of polarizing our politics. It's a way of draining our resources. And it's just a way of damaging our sense of common solidarity and our sense of humanity. So, yeah, well within Putin's playbook, could become a big issue. What can we do about it? Well, above all, we must support Ukraine. We must implore our masters in government to support Ukraine in any and every way that they can. Um, but we, at the more micro level here on MriyaReport, unfortunately, we are unable to provide Ukraine with the weapons she needs to beat Russia, not only because they're eye-wateringly expensive, but because we are not arms dealers. So we might end up in Guantanamo Bay if we try to supply them with Patriot systems. Anyway, what we can do, though, is we can help on the electricity supply front. So once again, as I said, we are working with New Use Energy, which is an American company, big supporters of Ukraine. I think they're based in Arizona, but I'm not entirely sure. I think it's quite sunny in Arizona, so that would make sense. They are going to be supplying us with solar power systems, some of which will be made in Ukraine. So New Use Energy, they have operations in Ukraine and manufacturing in Ukraine. So by supporting this fundraiser, you will be supporting Ukraine's current economy, Ukraine's skill base, keeping her people employed, but also helping Ukraine build the industries of the future that she will need for her economic recovery and eventual integration into the European Union. So New Use Energy, we are aiming to buy 3 of these systems. I have previously said 2. I apologize for the error. It is in fact 3. Those 3 will cost us 25,000 of your American dollars total. We're currently on 17,500. So we've got a little way to go. So I do urge you, please, to check out the tweet first in the nest. There's loads of information in that tweet thread. We regularly publish updates on the fundraiser and updates on the technology. And the final cool thing I'm going to point out to you is that one of the great things about MriyaReport is we are not just a charitable organization, we are a media organization as well. So we aim to get the victims, the beneficiaries of your largesse to come on the space and have a chat with us, which is jolly good fun, right? So a couple of weeks ago, we had some medics from Kharkiv come and talk about their work, the pressures they face in wartime, keeping the people of Kharkiv safe, happy, and healthy. We will aim to get similar people on again. And I honestly don't think there is any other Ukraine aid organization that lets you interact online with the people live on digital radio with the people who are benefiting from your amazing generosity as our listener base. So that's a nice little perk you get by supporting Ukraine via MriyaReport. Another little perk is if you are American, we have good news for you because we are a 501c3, so you can offset your you can offset your donation against your federal income tax liability. If you are not American, you can also donate, of course, but your tax mileage may vary according to local tax law. So please take professional advice on that one. So check out our website, MriyaReport.org. You can set up regular donations, you can make one-off donations, and together we will power Kharkiv and keep the lights on and keep the medics at work. So that's my begging over. Let's go to Mockers, please. Mockers.
I just want to check that you all heard that it's super important that we get this done. Did you? Just making sure. Thank you. I've been sat on that punchline for ages.
That we get this done. I'm not sure I get it.
It was what was looping on the last space. It was me saying, it's super important that we get this done. Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's super important that we get this done. And so on. So I'm just checking that everybody knows that it's super important that we get this done.
We should have left that on loop for a couple of hours. That's basically our whole message. It's super important that we get this done. We should have just left that on and
subliminal.
Yeah,
subliminal messaging right there.
Oh dear. Gosh, it'd be nice to be in the pub. It is a balmy 25 degrees here in Tallinn and beautifully sunny. But there we go. Okie dokie. So I see the able Jenny has joined us and changed the title. Splendid.
Of course I have. Everybody needs to know that it's the North Sea Empire power hours, I guess. And the Empress Jenny is pissed off at the Russians because of their imperialistic ways. They have decided to arbitrarily just change borders willy-nilly, like however it pleases them. And so I crown myself Empress of Jenny. So my pronouns from now on will be Your Highness, I guess. Sorry, that one just slipped out. And as Empress of Jenny, I decided that St. Petersburg should be known by the name under which it was founded, which is Nienskam. And also, I'm actually expanding the border since, we apparently do this as we please. So my protectorate, I'm not the empress over these nations. It's just under my protectorate. The Nordics and the Baltics. And I'm waiting for Russia to FAFO, or actually FA, so I can show them FO. What do you think of that?
That sounds splendid. Have we had somebody who really understands maritime law come up and talk about the latest water grab yet? Because I'm not fully abreast on exactly what impact it'll have.
No, we haven't. But I can see how they could stop, ships from moving through, they get to do whatever the hell they please because it's within their territorial waters. Um, but I think this is more salami slicing. Also, this morning, Russia said that they need to take over Russland because, it's a useful island.
So where are these grabs? There's one Lithuania, one in Finland, right?
Yeah, so one of them is in the Bay of Finland. Apparently, they're not stealing from Estonia; they're only taking from Finland. Uh, I don't know if they're going to make like a corridor that is going to be part Finland, part Russia, part Estonia, like at the at that narrow little strait, so that they have a strait to go out from St. Petersburg. Because if I have understood things correctly, as it is right now, Estonia and Finland together can effectively shut down their access into the Baltic Sea. And then they have expanded the border near Kaliningrad because they're frankly assholes, and they can.
But it's all maritime. It's not land based.
Yet.
Because here's the thing, right? Something I've noticed is they've chosen two countries that basically don't have navies to expand their waters into, and that means that the countries that have announced this are basically not in a position to move any chess pieces on the board, right? Um, whereas land, it would be completely different. So Russia could announce that she was annexing a little bit of Lithuania, and Lithuania could just immediately respond by sending a whole bunch of troops to that little bit of Lithuania and daring the Russians to try and push them off. Whereas with naval stuff, especially if you don't have a navy or you don't have a big one, that becomes rather more difficult, right?
Yeah. So, but here, the part that concerns me is, like I I just can't imagine that they can arbitrarily just change the way the boundaries are. It's not up to Russia. That is actually like a giant. And also, and this is why I've asked people from Finland to be here, because they have a deal with Russia where Russia is not supposed to do this. And Finland is not supposed to, fortify Åland. And considering that, Russia has not kept to any of their treaties, I'm thinking make Åland, fortified again. I know that the people that live there don't really want it. I would present them with an alternative either, and if they're opposed to Finnish soldiers, we can station French ones, like I don't care what nationality they have, just station them and ask them, would you rather have, troops that will defend you, or do you want to have Russian troops? Just present them with the options, because at this point, eh, yeah, I don't trust Russia, and Russia is eyeballing Åland and Gotland. It's not just one island, even though they're very vocal about the one Swedish island. They're not as vocal about Åland. And I think it is because it's not fortified. Sweden was just like, we don't like the way you're eyeballing this island, so we're going to put like lots of troops there. We're going to make it hard for you to come there. But I also have back channels, so I'm going to look through those. And I see Live Snipers here. So I think we should go to him, Tim. Don't you?
I just got a brief comment. You see what they've done here, right? They've done basically exactly the same thing as they did with Crimea, right? So their justification for seizing Crimea was it was ceded by the Russian Soviet Socialist Republic, or rather, it's Russian Federated Soviet Socialist Republic, to the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. Remember, these are a single country. in the 1950s or whatever it was, and that was a mistake, or that is at least unilaterally reversible by Russia, because it was meant to be a gift or a loan or whatever bullshit they made up, and therefore we can just simply undo, despite all the recognition of Ukraine's sovereign borders we've done since then. We can simply undo that decision that was made by Khrushchev in the 50s or whatever it was, and Crimea is ours again. They've basically done the same thing, right? Because they keep harking back to, well, they keep referring to maritime boundaries between the Lithuanian Soviet Socialist Republic and, like kind of internal boundary changes within the Soviet Union that were made in 1985. So they're kind of doing a very similar thing here. They're kind of saying, well, those boundaries were drawn by the Soviet Union, therefore they don't mean anything, and we can just unilaterally change them and blah 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 blah. It's total rubbish, of course, but it's basically the same thing as they did with Crimea.
Yeah, and it's bullshit, and I think that NATO should respond harshly. Light Sniper, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I was already wondering why Russia, if they give some clear announcement about something, but no, the thing is not so simple. Because now Interfax and TASS say that Russia has no intentions of moving its borders anywhere. And Pesko had a press conference today where he said that the planned movements of the border, which TASS and Interfax say that are not planned. Well, Pesko say that the moving the borders has no political background whatsoever. So again, confusion. That's what they're trying to put in the world. It's just amazing how they manage. Every time you think that they have hit the low point, then they find something still more confusing and outrageous. Well, at the same time, they say that they will do it, but it has no political dimensions, and at the same time they say that they are not planning to do it. So, well, I don't know. I don't care, to be quite honest. Thanks.
Well, the Lithuanian foreign minister, Gabriel Landsbergis, who was one of the world's most senior fellas, by the way, fun fact, he's said exactly the same thing, Lai Sniper. He said basically, well, this is a hybrid operation. They are attempting to spread fear, uncertainty, and doubt about their intentions in the Baltic Sea. This is an obvious escalation against NATO and the EU, and must be met with an appropriately firm response. Of course, it won't be met with an appropriately firm response. It will be met by sternly worded statements in the UN Security Council, and then absolutely nothing will happen, and Russia will move on to the next thing. Because that's how these things always seem to happen for some reason. Yeah, so it does seem that the Lithuanians are calling it out for what you say it is. Just Russian nonsense. Probably doesn't mean very much, but nevertheless, we should probably give them a kick in the bollocks about it. Light Sniper?
Yeah, the Finnish foreign ministers are pretty much the same. She said that there are certain rules which have been agreed in the United Nations, and well, we expect that or assume that Russia will also comply with the rules which they have signed in the UN, and the process will go. And but basically, the hybrid that kind of announcements are like a form of hybrid warfare, and their goal is to confuse. And the last sentence was, but the Finns don't get confused, period. So I think that's pretty much says it all. But, okay, I must admit, from my point of view, should the Russians really have so accurate GPS, what they are not basically famous for, that they would have sort of now some exact measurements which UN agrees to be valid, then okay, so be it. Then some borders will be redrawn. But also Finland and Estonia have a mutual agreement to leave like an international area of water between the countries. But there was some treaty which it's not, wouldn't have to be that way. So basically, Finland and Estonia could say that, okay, thank you, Russia, for raising this issue that the maritime borders could be re-evaluated and what's going on there. And Finland and Estonia could basically agree that their areas collide and are together. Sorry, I have noise here.
Thank you very much, Sly Sniper. Although I'm not one to accuse the Finnish government of naivety, but expecting Russia to abide by something that the UN has done, I think, is probably wishful thinking, because Russia is in pretty flagrant violation of the UN Charter at the moment.
No, I must say that there, I sense a certain degree of sarcasm in those sentences. Let's say it's quite obvious that this is just that the Finns sort of deliberately don't bite the bait and start overreacting and retaliating and announcing some bullshit, but they just say, okay, hey Russia, we go from the assumption that you will follow the rules which you have agreed to follow. It's just like a, how do I say, like a slightly hidden middle finger in their direction, actually, not a real stance what the Finns actually think. That's my interpretation. Thanks.
I'm just not amused by this.
My mic was muted. Sorry. Sorry, Jenny, please do go on. I was kind of talking into a muted mic and then it's unmuted suddenly.
I think you should like say what you said on mute, because I'm pretty sure it was like something really excellent. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that there's kind of agreeing with Lai Sniper that there's kind of a hint of an eye roll if you read Elina Valtonen's statement, who is the foreign minister of Finland. She said, we assume that Russia, as party to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, will act accordingly. It must be, yeah, Finland will not be confused. Oh yeah, that's it. Finland will not be confused. That's the eye roll, right? That's the sarcasm, because the suggestion there is that Russia is very confused. What do you reckon, Jenny?
I think that they should stop doing drugs. They should just stick to vodka, because even Medvedev seems to make more sense than the crap I've seen come out of the Kremlin in the past 24 hours. If this is true, that they're gonna do like this water grabbing from Finland and from Lithuania, because I have somebody in the background that suggests that this might be just trolling. It's not real. But I've seen other things that concern me as well. And it's no more salami slicing. This is, and I'm getting really annoyed. Let's hear what Matthias has to say. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, I think it's kind of obvious what Russia's intending to do here. I think they're introducing an imperial feudal playbook here of fabricating claims, or saying we have, not by heraldry or ancestry, we have the right to a certain region of space or geography, but we also unilaterally say, well, we just say we have a claim on this. And obviously, we need to understand that that's the playbook they're trying to introduce to replace the rule of law, right? And specifically here, I think that they're testing the waters in terms of, if we start to introduce this type of playbook, how will NATO respond? So we're saying that we have a claim to this region, but we're also saying we don't intend to use it, obviously, disorienting. The worst thing we can do, I think, is to be super reasonable, listening to their arguments, but just recognize it for what it is. Because if this flies under the radar, like below the threshold for us to respond to it, based on what it actually is, then they will keep doing this. And as said here before, that's the playbook that was used in Crimea, but for different reasons. So if we can introduce sneakily small gradually claims on NATO territory. And again, this is in the water, so it's not on land. Again, raising the threshold for action to respond politically from the West. We're slowly kind of creating a gray zone where rule of law is not applicable. And over time, if this becomes a pattern that we don't respond to, then that's going to erode the whole political rhetoric of defending every inch of NATO territory. Because, hey, should we really go to war based on them claiming this part of international waters? They don't even have the intention, want to make a big thing out of it. So they're attacking the playbook, the rule-based playbook. That's my point of view. So thoughts?
So you think there may be like daring everybody else to start messing around with it as well, basically?
Not necessarily. I think they are testing. They want to verify how the West will respond to this type of disruption, to how to resolve disputes over territory. So they're basically saying unilaterally, they are deciding themselves that they have a claim on territory that wasn't Russian before. But the difference from Crimea is it's potentially NATO territory. So this is the first step to testing the integrity of, NATO territory.
Sure, I mean that makes a lot of sense. I think this was a sorry, I'll just mute Buddy there. Keeps hot micing. This was a point.
It's obviously a hypothesis from mine, but if I would start to test NATO's political resolve to stand our ground on rule-based order and are defending our territory, this would be a reasonable first test.
Yeah, sure. I think that's a very good point. And this was something Jenny said last night, right? As I made the hang on, I'm just trying to recall our conversation, right? I made the point that Russia does have form on declaring and policing other people's waters as their own. And I made the Crimea comparison, right? Where the Russian annexation of Crimea from a NATO naval perspective was simply ignored, and regular freedom of navigation sailings happened through it. There were a couple of incidents in this. So there was the incidents with, I think, HMS Diamond, the British ship, where they were buzzed by a MiG-34 or something like that. But all in all, Russia proved that she wasn't willing to enforce any control of those waters in a kinetic way. Now, a point Jenny made, of course, as you've just made, Matthias, is that is not a NATO country, right? That is Crimea, which is part of Ukraine. So yeah, I kind of agree that this does represent a sort of, as the Finns have said, it does represent an escalation of sorts. And it does, it is a pretty hard poke at something that NATO at least claims to take very seriously indeed. Matthias, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just add another reason for why the choice of location is pretty smart. Like, Russia is fully aware about how the Baltics will respond to any challenge of that territory, because the Baltics have a cultural bias ever since, if you remember, in the Second World War, when the Russians came to the Baltics, they chose not to fight. And there's been a cultural kind of regret within the military, but also in society, that they didn't fight back, like the Finns did, for example. So Russia is fully aware that there's a hair trigger in the Baltics to respond with military force. So by testing the waters in the Baltics by something that would look at the distance from other Western countries, like the old European Western countries like France and the UK and Italy and Germany, they couldn't care less about a few meters in international waters. But the Baltics recognize this exactly for what it is. So this is an opportunity to test how not just the West responds within NATO, but also an opportunity to potentially drive a political wedge in NATO regarding at what threshold should we start responding politically with harder tools, so to speak? So I think that is the opportunity the Russians are seeing, and they're doing this at a very low political cost comparatively. So that's what I'm saying.
The part that concerns me the most is the fact that because now I kind of looked and they're saying Finnish archipelago. That means that there are tiny islands there. That is land. We're no longer talking exclusively just water. There might be land. So what's the next thing? Well, they're making an incursion in the in northern Finland. Well, it's just wooded area. Nobody lives there. Who gives a shit if the trees belong to Russia or Finland? And then they're inching closer and closer to NATO as well, because that is basically a Russian speaking. It is a Russian speaking city or town in Estonia. Yeah, it's practically Russia. So what difference does it make that we just rewrite the border a little bit? This is the part that is getting dangerous. And frankly, I have not looked, but I feel that the rhetoric coming from the Kremlin towards Sweden is getting harder and harder every time. It's no longer just a law that says Russia has the right to strike Gotland militarily because Sweden is oppressing Russians. Because that is what we do. Every Thursday, we put them in the Skampålen, which is you tie them up like on a public square and you publicly shame them. This is something, it's a medieval thing that Sweden used to do.
We call that the stocks in English.
Yeah, we just call it the pole of shame in Swedish. And
I prefer
so
your phrase, the pole of shame.
yeah, I know. It's really funny. So this is what we do, to Russians every Thursday. And we feed them. We throw like surströmming at them, just to make the shame a little bit more felt. And now they're just saying I have to read the articles because I had the article sent to me like 5 minutes before, and then the app was like the space was crashing, everything happened at once. So I haven't had a chance to read the entire one. But Mikael Bydén, who is the commander in chief of the armed forces in Sweden, has said Russia has been eyeballing Gotland for a long time. And apparently there was something about striking or taking Gotland, not striking, taking it. So it's not just, and I don't know if the rhetoric is as harsh towards other countries, because yesterday I was sent a video where they're talking about taking over the entire country of Sweden and implementing rubles as a currency. So we're going to be Russia over my dead body. But and this, it's getting harsher and harsher, you know, all the time. The next time I'm going to see something else that is even harsher than this. And I don't know if this happens to like a lot of countries, because when I talked about them having the drones flying over southern Sweden, which may or may not have included over a military base, there are people they're like, yeah, well, that happens a lot in Finland, in the Baltics, in Denmark, in Norway. So that is supposed to make it okay. I am not okay with this. And they were known to be Russian. So I'm just like, I it's not okay that it happens in Finland. It's not okay that it happens in the Baltics, and it certainly is not okay that it happens in Sweden. Um, we have borders for a reason. And if the country does not give you the okay to fly your drones over certain objects in that country, like, don't. Super easy. We can have friendly relations if you like respect our boundaries. And please start doing that, Russia, because you are effing around. And eventually the finding out part will come, and it will not be pretty. What do you think, Tim?
I was actually going to ask. I mean, yeah, obviously, I wholeheartedly agree. It would be very, very nice if Russia finally accepted. They don't even have to learn. They just have to accept what a border actually is, because they don't. They seem to be working. Well, they are working from their own highly specialized definition of a border. Now, is that an actual Russian bullshit vector that Sweden is oppressing Russians on Gotland? Because isn't everybody on Gotland basically German? Are there even any Russians there?
Well, they were saying, so there was a law that they passed in April of 2022. I think it was April. It could have been March, could have been May. So don't quote me on the date. And this made the headline news in Sweden, in one of our big papers here in Sweden, about this law being passed. And it said Russia has the right to militarily strike Gotland because if they find like something about Swedes repressing Russians or descendants of Russians. And the odds are that there is somebody, like a Swedish soldier went to war against Russia back in like the 1500s, got himself a Russian wife, for whatever reason. Maybe she was really extremely pretty, and he brought her back, and now their descendants live on Gotland. They have a summer house there. And apparently we are oppressing them. I don't know how, but
Because Visby, like the city of Visby, that was built by the like dealers, right? Who were German. And I sort of assume, I know it's part of Sweden, but I always assumed that the people who lived on Gotland were at least the descendants of Germans. Or is everybody basically Swedish now and they killed all the Germans? Because someone did kill all of the like dealers, the pirates. It was the Duke of Mecklenburg-Strelitz or something got fed up with them in the 17th century and had them all killed.
yeah, I'm gonna go with we killed all the Germans. They're all Swedish. They're Gotlänningar, so they're Swedish. And even if there was somebody that's great, 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 like from the 1500s was from Russia, how are they being oppressed? Is the ice cream costing too much in Gotland now? Is the prices of beer too high? Is this how we're oppressing them? Because tough nuggies everything is more expensive in Gotland because it's a tourist trap. And so they're like, oh, I can tell by your accent you're from Stockholm. Special price for you. It's like 5 times the local cost. It's a thing every tourist trap does around the world. So
But why do they have Russian accents?
they do not. They have a French one just to annoy you.
Okay, I see we have both Matthias and Den John jumping up and down to tell me about the history of Gotland. I see your hand, Katinka, but I'd like to just round off this topic and then we'll go straight to you. So I'll go Matthias, Den John, then Katinka. Matthias.
Yeah, pesky Germans, Gotlandish people, yeah, incredible. No, they just have a weird Swedish accent, but I think obviously it depends on how far you go back, but it was Vikings at some point, and I don't know how cohesive Vikings were anyway in the beginning. But yeah, it's just again, let's zoom out and put our eyes on what's going on. It's again fabricating claims. We're fabricating made up reasons why we should have some sort of legitimate reason to put our noses into a place where it doesn't belong. That's what Russia is doing, first of all. And the second piece is not to talk so much about and think so much about how it's starting and if we should have some sort of reasonable discussion. It's about staying focused on how this story ends. We know how it ends. Every time Russia starts doing stuff like this, we know exactly how it ends. Some countries remember it much better, like the Baltics, like the Finnish, and like Ukraine are experiencing right now. We know how it ends. We've seen it in Crimea. We've seen it in Bucha, in Irpin, in Mariupol. That's how it ends. That's how it ends. So it doesn't matter how it starts. It's about eroding the thresholds for us to respond and stand our ground. That's what they're doing. And their aim is to replace the playbook with an imperial, medieval, in some ways feudal model of a supremacist Muscovy ruling over all its neighbors and oppressing them and creating a monoculture. That's what they want to do, and these are just the means to an end. That's what's going on. By the way, regarding Mikael Bydén, I saw that one as well, the Swedish military supreme commander. And I think he mentioned also Åland. What I can add there is I have a friend who has family and relatives on Åland and spends quite a, has some good hand on the pulse of what's going on there. And for the last couple of years, since the Russian invasion in Ukraine, people who live on Åland have started to change their opinion about this. Again, for those who don't know, Åland is a couple of small islands right in between Stockholm and Helsinki, in the middle of the Baltic Sea, north of Gotland, and it's been a demilitarized zone for a long time. But that is now something that people who live there, Åland, is starting to question if it's the right thing to do. After all, we all know what Russia is capable of when it starts going on imperialistic sprees. So that is still up in the air. I guess we could talk about other stuff, but yeah, I'll yield now on this topic.
Thank you very much, Matthias. Denjon, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. No, we cannot leave this topic. This is the top of the agenda. But
I've just called you all German. We can't leave this topic.
Yeah, well, I understand German better than you, I guess. Yeah, I think, Jenny, what you're referring to was in April about Gotland, I mean. And I think it was about, if I'm not wrong now, there were talks about, well, now Sweden is in NATO, there will be a NATO base on Gotland. And that great concern in Moscow, in Kremlin. And basically they said now it will be a legitimate target because it's threatening the stability in the Baltic Sea. So I think that's what they were upset about at the time. I'm not sure I've heard about Russians. I mean, about the minority or something. Yeah, and then also to what Matthias was saying about Åland. Actually, I saw what's his name, Joachim Paasikivi, Swedish colonel, I think. He suggested that now Åland needs to be remilitarized again. Or it's a possibility, at least, suggest them to do that. So yeah, let's see how it goes. But I'm convinced this is boiling the frog. We are the frog, not Russia, and we have to act. Otherwise, we will have to act kinetically later on, defending ourselves. So better to do it now and take it seriously, because it is serious. We will not stop unless it's stopped.
Absolutely, thank you both. Yeah, and there was something Matthias said about kind of manufacturing these nonsense reasons for doing things. It kind of reminded me of kind of medieval / late 19th century behavior, right? So there was this whole body of kind of I guess scholarship based around how do you, in the medieval era at least, how do you go to war without committing a sin, right? And so they spent, the rulers of Europe at that time expended an enormous amount of energy or a kind of enormous amount of mental gymnastics trying to come up with justifications for invading their neighbors without falling foul of the Christian faith. And that kind of transmogrified in the 19th century into how do you invade your neighbor while remaining basically a decent chap. And there was a lot of kind of slightly Russian-y behavior around that. I think one of the shameful episodes in the history of the British Empire, for example, is probably the Zulu War. And whenever you see these kind of modern listicles that people keep writing about how god awful the British Empire was for some reason, you always, they give you like a list of things that the British Empire did that was allegedly the worst things, and none of them are really the worst things. They always miss the worst ones. They pick the least applicable possible options that they could from imperial history. But the way the Zulu War worked was there was an entirely imaginary security threat to Cape Colony from the Zulu Empire. Now, the Zulu Empire was horrible, right? Like, this was not a nice country, but nevertheless, it wasn't really a threat to British interests in South Africa. But nevertheless, the British Empire wanted to expand into its territory, so they had to come up with a reason to conquer it. So they manufactured this security threat. The Zulu army never crossed the river, right? It just didn't. And that was the initial position was, if Chetsueo crosses the river, then it's war, and he never did. So they were like, oh, bugger. Okay, so he's not a security threat. We have to think of another reason. And so they sent an emissary to him with a load of, who was it? Sir Henry Bartle Frere, I think, was the governor at the time, is the chap in charge in the Cape. He sent a messenger to King Chetsueo and said, well, unless you agree to this series of obviously impossible conditions, then we're going to go to war with you. And of course, Chetsueo told them to go fuck themselves. And then the British Empire invaded Zululand and defeated it and annexed it. And the inventing of reasons, I guess my point is not new, but most countries have grown up a bit since then, right? They've stopped doing this. They've stopped feeling, they've stopped feeling the need to invade their neighbors. Point number one, or at least civilized countries anyway. And even if they do that, the kind of era of highly acrobatic excuse building around that is over, because everybody just sees straight through it. They will just say, no, that's obviously nonsense. Right? It's, Luxembourg is not a threat to you, Germany. Stop it. So yeah, it's an interesting one that the Russians still do this, and I guess, well, we can analyze why all afternoon. Okay, Katinka, thank you very much for your patience. I'm sorry it's taken so long to get to you, but you have your hand up.
Yeah, not a matter. I'm listening. So, my dear Pitim, you're living in Estonia, aren't you?
I can't hear Katinka.
No.
Oh, that is a you problem, Tim, because I can hear her. She asked if you lived in Estonia, and yes, he does.
Yeah. And also, Estonia is threatened by this bill or not bill from Russia. They want to change the border at the mouth of the Narva River. So it's not only Finland or Lithuania, it's also Estonia. And yes, we have a good point. Finland and Estonia have a bilateral agreement about using less than the 12 kilometers sea miles, that there is an international area between. So bilateral things, we can say we don't use it anymore. We claim our 12 kilometers, 12 miles. And then Russia has a big problem. Thanks. But pity if Tim can't hear it when I'm speaking about Estonia.
I know. And I think that Finland and Estonia should claim their 12 nautical miles into the Bay of Finland, because if they are going to FA, I think that you should present them with the FO. So it's I think it is really important that Russia not be given like a free pass again for like the gazillionth time, because they have nuclear weapons at this point. So I don't own a baseball bat, but I can get a hold of one real easy. So it's what does that have to do? So there's a phrase I like. Russia has nuclear weapons. So does France, so does the UK, so does the US. So what does that have to do with the price of tea in China? Absolutely nothing. And I think it's time that they find out. You should increase your, and so should, Sweden and Denmark, which it can't because it isn't, there isn't enough space for 24 nautical miles in total between parts of Sweden and Denmark. So we can't, but we can always exercise our rights to not let ships that are heading for Russian ports to go through into the Baltic Sea. Go ahead, Katinka, if you want to respond.
Yeah, I want to respond. They should use as much as possible and close the international area because now they need their own area. And well, pity that other ships can't cross anymore.
I
Well,
agree. Oh, go ahead, Tim.
it would be illegal to close the Gulf of Finland completely. Russia have a right to transit it.
Yeah, they also have a right. They, yeah, I think that they are in timeout, international timeout.
I mean, there is a strong case for saying, well, rules-based order is one thing, but you are in violation of the Charter of the United Nations. So maybe resolve that issue, which you can very easily and unilaterally by withdrawing your savages from Ukraine. But in the meantime, the principle of international law is that the rules must be obeyed, and it is illegal for Finland and Estonia to close the Gulf of Finland. They have a right to innocent passage, so to speak. Giggity goo always makes me smile. Innocent passage, but I'm a child. Now there is a tweet out on this very topic from Mr. Mika Aaltola. That's my finish. Mika Aaltola. And he is with the Finnish Institute of International Affairs. He is in fact the director of the Finnish Institute of International Affairs, and he has a thing or two to say about this very topic. According to Mr. Aaltola, Finland and Estonia should negotiate with each other about sharing their territorial waters in full and comprehensively in the Gulf of Finland. This would not mean closing the Gulf of Finland because UNCLOS gives the right to fast and continuous passage, but extending the territorial waters to 12 nautical miles is natural and standard in the world. This would give more rights to control the Gulf of Finland, including its airspace. The EU and national legislation would better extend to ships traveling in territorial waters, especially if they violate maritime safety and are uninsured. Now, under the 1991 agreement, Finland and Estonia agreed that the purpose of the exception regulations regarding the Gulf of Finland was to secure an unrestricted passage for international sea and air traffic to St. Petersburg and the Kronstadt. Changes can be made to the agreement between the two countries to ensure better management of the area. Cooperation with NATO would enable better resources to implement the control in practice. Oh, I see what that means. That means the Royal Navy doing all the work. Okay, here we go. Now, future EU resources for this control would be desirable. Oh, right. Okay, so it's Brussels paying for all the work. That's fine. It is worth choosing candidates in the European elections who understand these issues. We deserve value in Finland. So it's an interesting thought, right? So extending the territorial waters of both countries out to 12 nautical miles, that basically narrows the Gulf of Finland. It doesn't deny Russia the right to transit it, because that would be illegal, but it does extend the area in which both Finland and Estonia can exercise their sovereign rights to control shipping in their own waters. So I think it is an interesting an interesting point from Mr. Altula. Okay, so Sniper is jumping up and down to the point where he's exploding. So I'm going to go to him. Sniper.
Kaboom. Thanks. Well, I think that this suggestion from Altula is very nice. And if I would be a diplomat, then I would say nice thanks to Russia for raising the issue that the maritime borders in the Gulf of Finland could be re-evaluated. And I think that's if Russia sees some need for that, then we can say, okay, well, nice idea, thank you, we will do it. And well, sort of coming back to the Åland Islands, what has been mentioned here on this space already several times is that what adds insult to the injury regarding the Finns. It's a Finnish territory, but it's demilitarized. And oh, the irony, the observation of attending to the rules is done by the Russian embassy on the Åland Islands. So basically, the Soviet Union and Finland made this agreement. Well, Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. So one party of this treaty has ceased to exist. And many Finns are now asking whether their existence or presence there is actually legitimate at all at the moment. Because basically the Russian embassy in Mariehamn are responsible for observing whether the demilitarization is actually carried out and not violated. I mean, how stupid can you be? But I think that should be, the treaty should have been sort of banished like ages ago already. Thanks. And one more thing, Jenny, you talked about the baseball bat. There's before there was this bonking stick, there was something that was called LART, L-A-R-T. That was called loser attitude readjustment tool, and I think that might be something which is applicable as well. Thanks.
In Sweden, we call it attitude adjustment with bandvagnsnyckel. And for anybody who doesn't understand what that is, it is a wrench times 100. It is massive. And I think that the mechanized unit in Boden, they're fairly close to the Russian border. We just need permission from Finland to go through Finland. And we can get to the Russian border and give them an attitude adjustment. They have many bandvagnsnycklar, and they can do attitude adjustments there. Do you have any idea who's next, Tim?
Because I think it was Denjon, Linda, Matthias.
You better, thank you. Stop talking so much. My notebook is filled now. I'm running out of ink. Adding topics to what I had said. So first, about the internet or the waters between Sweden and Denmark, Öresund. That's Swedish, I would say. So let's put that to rest. And then Tim, you said that Russia has some rights, blah blah blah. Yeah, they have some rights. I will now read it. You have the right to remain silent, and so on. So yeah, I don't know. We should really take them seriously. And regarding Åland, this is also a new bullet I had to put up. I think now there should be calls for no towers for Åland. That becomes escalatory. So let's keep that embassy in one piece. But now to the real thing I want to say, and this is about how Russia would attack NATO. There's different theories. Obviously, this has been discussed many places, and there's different theories on how it could be done, and also how long it would take before Russia could do it. How many years they would have to rebuild their own forces they have spent in Ukraine. And if what they're doing now is what it looks like, and if it works, then I would say that time is extremely short. The time they need is extremely short, because the blackmail has worked, and they could easily, if they manage to split the Article 5 resolve or the NATO resolve, then they don't need to rebuild anything. They can use what they have and go for the smaller countries. So yeah, I see this as a very serious situation. Should not be taken light. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan John. Jenny, anything to add?
No, because I keep pestering you and saying this is really serious, and you keep saying that you don't know if NATO is going to take it as seriously as you and I do. So I agree with Dan John. It's a serious matter, and we should kick them in the nuts and break their nose, not just punch them. I'm sorry, Linda. I am all about peace, love, and go F yourself. Just I am tired of this. I was actually tired of Russia a long time ago. It was Linda next, right?
Yeah. Linda, welcome.
I think so. Hi. Yeah, Jenny. We're we're more in line than we are not in line, but I do make a difference. But nevertheless, yeah, I'm with you guys, and I see, with regard to rights of navigation, with rights come responsibilities. And if you're going to thumb your nose at responsibilities, then those rights need to be recalibrated or rethought or whatever. But so, yeah, I didn't realize this whole, between Estonia and Finland, that there had been an adjustment where the norm of the 12-mile norm was adjusted downward because of the the negotiations and the betterment of Estonia and Finland. So yeah, go back to the norm, the international norm, making it 12 miles, but then also ships going through in between Estonia and Finland. Again, if they have a right to pass through those waters, there's also a responsibility. So for example, just to be using just for example, say Russia started running slave ships through those waters. Do the other countries around there, and including Estonia and Finland, have no right to say, yeah, no, no, we're not allowing slavery. We're not allowing slave operations, slave businesses, slave ships, right? And I think, I think there's, rather than just very hard, you know, black and white, sometimes there's a need for nuance and for reinterpreting the rules and or adjusting the rules. I mean, the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution from 1790, had provisions built in order to modify it in years to come, because they recognize the fact that rules need to be adjusted as the world changes and circumstances change, and they find out that people are doing things that they never thought to write up precisely in the Constitution. So it's time to readjust rules, I think. I don't mean go wild with it. I mean realistically and rationally. But anyway, I'm rambling. Thanks.
Thank you, Linda. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned slavery. It is specifically mentioned in UNCLOS. So the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea obliges every state to take effective measures to to prevent and punish the transport of slaves in ships authorized to fly its flag, and to prevent the unlawful use of its flag for that purpose. Any slave taking refuge aboard any ship, whatever its flag, shall be ipso facto free. There are similar provisions for piracy, for instance. So all states shall cooperate to the fullest possible extent in the repression of piracy on the high seas, or in any other place outside the jurisdiction of any state. So yeah, if a ship is transporting slaves or engaged in piracy, then you're allowed to, you in fact, you're not just allowed to, you are required to intervene if you have the power to do so. Yeah, if you're able, and if you have the means and opportunity to do so. So yeah, that kind of pretty much settles that one. Now, the issue we have with this stuff, of course, is that any attempt to interfere with Russian shipping at any point in the Baltic Sea will be met by escort of that shipping by the Russian Baltic Fleet. So in those circumstances, we have to be prepared to shoot Russian ships. Right? Like that's, leaving aside the legalities of it. Yeah, okay, so I think you make a good point that constitutions are amended. International law is also amended, but international law is amended by the bodies that make international law, right? So as it stands, UNCLOS forbids us from closing Baltic Sea to Russian shipping. And as the guardians of the rules-based international order, that is what I strongly expect our leaders to do. They will simply abide by the rules-based international order. They will make a lot of noise at the UN, and whatever Russia does in defiance of the rules-based international order, she will basically get away with. It's depressing, but that's how it works, I'm afraid. It's all a question of political will, and we don't have any. Okie dokie. Let us go to Matthias, please. Matthias.
Next thing. Yeah, I'm not an expert on maritime law, but I do know that there's waters. That's what we're talking about. Like,
sorry, Matthias. We can barely hear you. It's really noisy.
Is this better? Can you hear me better now?
That's better. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just get out of here.
Now we can't hear you again.
He has found the one spot in Sweden with no coverage.
With no coverage and no problems.
How about now?
Yep, that's
now
better.
We can
Thank
hear
you.
This feels like a 90s cell phone conversation, but yeah. No, I was saying they're territorial waters, which is 100% your right and territory, not to be violated by other countries. And then there's the economical zone, and then there's international waters. For example, in the economical zone, you have the right to, if you're Norwegian, set up an oil rig and extract oil, but you cannot see anything if the Italian Navy rolls up and parks next to your oil rigs. So there's degrees or of these zones. But regarding the Russian activity in the Baltics, naval activity, I know there's been some problems already with the shadow fleet that Russia is operating, partly, I think primarily for the purposes of avoiding sanctions. So they're shipping things they're not allowed to ship on ships through Baltic trade routes. And that is a problem. We've had the problems with the Russians operating underwater and sabotaging all kinds of infrastructure. I know also, so I guess that is one potential reason to actually do something about Russian freedom of navigation on sea in the Baltics. Potentially, obviously, needs political will. I don't think there's enough alignment on how to deal with that problem, but the problem has been surfaced politically. I know from a couple of Baltics, Nordics prime ministers have talked about it. Of how to deal with it. And also, I know that the Estonian, I think it was head of military, whatever that country's term for that is, has mentioned there's been some planning initiatives on the military side of how to create the naval embargo to restrict Russian freedom of navigation in the Baltics. And he talked about, he mentioned that and said that there's been some conversation and joint planning on this in this direction, and not just from Estonia, but also from, I think, Finland and some other Nordic nations. But so the reasons for doing something and the potential how of doing it, at least are being discussed at the moment. So.
I did not know that. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthias. Okay, gosh, who was it next? I think it was it back to Linda? No, it was Light Sniper, then Linda, then Dendron. Light Sniper.
Yeah, just to add a bit more confusion attempts by the Russians. The biggest Finnish newspaper, Helsingin Sanomat, just published an hour ago that the whole material regarding this possible planned readjustment of the borders has vanished from the pages of Russian government. So nothing to see here. Please disperse. I don't know. It's just a shit show. Just wanted to let you know. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Sorry, Jenny.
No, isn't. Oh, geez, I can't believe that you took that off. Was it then John, then Linda?
Yep.
Then John, go ahead.
Okay, I think so. Yeah, so now it's, in other words, confirmed. Their intention is confirmed because they have denied it. So great. And actually, what I wanted to say was what Matthias was taking up, the shadow fleet, the Russian shadow fleet in the Baltic Sea. But I have a question here for anyone who knows. Those ships, are they actually Russian flagged, or is it just random ships? And because either way, they shouldn't be allowed to transfer, especially not in our waters, because they are just outside the coast of Gotland, and apparently they have communication equipment which is not normal for a old bark. Advanced communication equipment, probably signaling intelligence and so on. And yeah, they are doing that. But if they're not even Russian ships, what the hell is going on? And even if they are Russian ships, they shouldn't be allowed. Something needs to be done. The frog is boiling. Time to stop.
So these ships that come from St. Petersburg are not flagged, and they have no insurance, which means Gotland's class.
Yeah, or submarines. They can handle it.
Yeah, they have to take them on the way back though. I don't want them to take them out before they have unloaded to the actually flagged ship that are insured that come from anywhere in the world. So they meet up in the. I don't know if they are in the Swedish economic zone or if they're just outside international water. Either way, if one of those rusty old, what I assume to be rusty old Russian ships, because they do come from St. Petersburg, from the port of St. Petersburg. So I'm going to take a wild guess and say they're not North Korean. I could be wrong. There's always a chance that I am completely wrong. I doubt it. But they're coming fully loaded. As far as I have come to understand it in the papers, they come loaded with crude oil. They do a ship-to-ship transfer to a legitimate boat, and then that ship leaves again and takes off from the Baltic Sea, and the Russian barge goes back to St. Petersburg, which means it passes through the Bay of Finland, and this is probably a part of why they want to make the international water a little bit wider and also extend their territory, because maybe they can get those other ships squeezed in there. But I know that the reason why the Swedish government got involved in this, and I don't remember which of our minister, if it was Paul Jonsson or if it was some other, like the minister or something, the environmental minister. They want to get this shut down because this is an accident waiting to happen. If we don't put a stop to it, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. we will have an ecological disaster in the Baltic Sea that will take years. And because these ships are uninsured, it's up to each country to clean up Russia's mess. I am not a fan of paying Russia anything for anything. And I'm certainly not really, super excited about having my tax money going to clean up their mess. They caused the mess. If they still have to send people to come and lick the beaches of Gotland clean, uh, have the people that they have sent to the colony, like, or the gulags in Siberia, come clean up that crap that they left when this accident happens, unless we shut it down. Do you want to say anything on this, Tim?
No, I think we just about covered it. I'm trying to learn a bit more about the legal status of the Gulf of Finland. I mean, I understand that that there is there is an agreement with the Russians called GoFrep, which is the Gulf of Finland reporting system, which basically establishes a reporting zone down the middle of the Gulf of Finland. So there's Estonian waters, Finnish waters, and Russian waters, and then there's a strip in the middle with an east and a westbound route, which is controlled trilaterally by Russia, Finland, and Estonia. So this effectively means that whatever regime is in place to regulate traffic, the Russians can just stuff it up. Yeah, but again, I don't know a huge amount about maritime law, so I'll leave it. I'll leave it there. Okay, let's go to Linda then, please, Linda.
One of the things that concerns me is that even if they did even if Russia did withdraw this signaling that they, were insisting on, wider pass-throughs between Finland and Estonia, etc. Even if they did withdraw it, this signals to me something very dangerous, because that tells me that Estonia could be in their sights for their next military aggressiveness. One of the things that I've thought for a very long time now is that those decision makers, political decision makers, as well as military decision makers, need to have a master's in psychology, abnormal psychology, and be well versed in how psychopaths and bullies, etc., operate, and how their brains work, which is different from non-psychopaths. Anyway, there's a whole, Tom Zimbardo brought up a guy who was one of the world experts in this here, what, a year and a half ago, something like that, a year ago. And that might be worth playing, because psychopaths' brains work differently. But nevertheless, you can have psychopathic, or people who are bullies. But I would extend it, and I would love to see psychologists and sociologists get together and create a DSM-5, not just pertaining to individuals, but pertaining to groups, societies, countries, etc. Because this is how bullies operate. And I think Russia is signaling, intentionally or unintentionally, that Estonia might be their next target, because this is how bullies work. This is how they operate. And I think we need to be aware of that and expect bully behavior. Well, the only way that you can expect bully behavior is to know how bullies operate. And our decision makers, I think, are not well versed, if versed at all, in that. But I think we need to be aware of that, because it can inform what we need to do as far as protection, but it gives us some lead time to know how to do that and what to do and what not to do. So this situation needs to be gamed out because Russia will continue poking. This is what bullies do. They will continue poking, and it needs to be gamed out. And it needs to be gamed out with the knowledge of these are psychopaths. These are not rational people making, Russians making decisions. These are psychopaths making decisions. And so you can still game that out. What is a psychopath more prone to do? And that can be gamed out. And then start figuring out counter protections or counter moves, whatever, protections, counter moves to that, and use that as real knowledge rather than just blowing it off. Because this is the MO of Russia. Anyway, I'll shut up now again.
Thank you. I read somewhere that most leaders of most CEOs and most likely also political leaders have psychopathic tendencies. Well, we all have small traits of everything, but they tend to. I've heard that somewhere. I don't remember when and where. Then John, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so regarding the shadow fleet, where it's operating. So it is in Swedish economical zone, and on the absolute border of the Swedish, what do you call it, territorial zone or whatever the Swedish exclusive zone. And why is that? Because just a few clicks out, and they will be on international water. So this is again, it's not just about transferring oil. This is about poking and likely spying as well. And it should be stopped. Absolutely, should be stopped. Yeah. So you just want to clarify that this is happening on basically on Swedish waters. Thanks. Last one. And if there is an accident with oil, then I can always vouch for the West Coast. We have lovely beaches there. So yeah, don't despair.
I know, but we still have to clean up Gotland, and I think that should be Russia's job. I know that there are beautiful coasts or beautiful beaches on the West Coast, and I think you have real beaches and not like those rocky things that some Swedes claim are beaches. So
Ching.
I know. See what I did there? I plugged you guys. It's true. The Swedes are like, oh, this is a beach, and the rocks, the sand are like 2-inch rocks that you have to traverse across. It's not a beach. It's rock with water. Rocks with water. Uh, Dr. Nick, welcome up. Go ahead.
Hi. Hey, to what Linda was talking about, there is a whole field within political science known as political psychology that does do this type of thing. And there have been people who have written things about Putin and have kind of sort of diagnosed him from a distance. Obviously, they can't, you know, sit in front of him and whatnot and do that sort of thing. But based on behaviors and, studying speeches, behaviors, and actions and whatnot, studying childhood and various things, they are able to come to different determinations. And some of them believe that he's like a malignant narcissist, which can become very dangerous. And, particularly if you have the helm of one of the largest nations in the world and combine that with that sort of power, that malignant narcissist can become extremely dangerous. So, there's discussion about that out there. So there is that does exist. it exists also in sociology. So, I mean, that's basically what sociology is. Not just about what groups do and whatever, and why are you friends with the person you're friends with. When sociology is done, at higher levels, it looks at why do societies, say in World War II, in the 1930s Germany, behave in the way they do, or why do Russians in in 2022 behave the way they do vis-a-vis Ukraine, etc. And there's also a lot of interdisciplinary bleed over between, say, political science, sociology, psychology, all of that, in examining all of these different things. So it does exist. To the extent to which political leaders actually pay attention to these things is questionable. I mean, all one has to do is look at people like, Jake Sullivan to get an idea exactly what's going on. I mean, it seems like they're listening to people like Jake Sullivan, who is definitely not an expert in Russia, let alone political psychology or anything like that. So, it sort of begs the question, but I digress. So the field does exist. There is stuff out there. Just thought I would throw that out there. So that's my contribution. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Nick. I didn't think about political science as a combination. So thank you for that. And same thing with sociology. That was really great. Matthias, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, I agree. I agree on the assessment that Russia is a bully, and there's a sense of narcissistic traits there of feeling validated in terms of a sense of self by violating the boundaries of others and stuff like that. But yeah, just got to draw the line, right? And then, John, I think regarding a potential oil catastrophe on the Gotland Islands, I think we should not let the Russians in to clean it up. I think what they would do, they just send some little green man and say, hey, well, obviously we made this mess and now we're going to claim this territory to clean it up. And by the way, we need security and we're just going to make a camp here. And we don't know how long it's going to take to clean this up. It might take years, so I don't think we should invite any creative ideas there. But yeah, hard to tell. Did you have a short comment on that then, John? Because I was going to propose moving into a different topic, but maybe you have a comment.
If I may, yeah. Yeah, and also, I mean, God forbid there's dead sailors involved. Then we have sacred grounds as well, where we're not allowed to say, yeah, you're onto something there. Don't let it happen.
So do we just clean it up ourselves and send them the bill, kind of like what they do with the reindeers up, the Norwegian reindeers? If they cross the border into Russia, they send a. I'm just going to mute you, Matthias, because the kids are. Sounds like you have a really awesome party, and I kind of want to be there. I hope you guys are playing around in water because it's hot where I am, so it must be really hot where you are. No, but.
Well, I'm living next to a school, and the kids are out here. Sorry about that.
Oh.
Yeah.
I hope they're having fun. No, but I think that we should send them the bill. Just saying, they send a bill to Norway, to the Norwegian government for reindeer that crosses the border into Russia and have the audacity to eat Russian grass. I feel sorry for the reindeer, but they're probably being poisoned. It's Russian after all.
I think I would favor just saying, no, don't worry about it. We'll clean it up, but now we're going to close the Baltic Sea. Sorry, you fucked up, and now you can't use this for trade lanes because obviously you can't deal with it. So
That is also a solution. What do you think of that solution, Tim?
That sounds good to me. Yes. After Linda, I've been reading a little bit more about the law governing the Straits of the Gulf of Finland and why why neither Estonia nor Finland have exercised their right to extend their exclusive economic zone into the Gulf of Finland. So I might have some answers on that. But first, let's go to Finland. Let's go to Finland. Let's go to Linda. Let's not go to Finland.
With regard to Dr. Nick, it looks like she's gone. Yeah, I still want to see the equivalent of a DSM-5, used by psychologists and psychiatrists for individuals. I still would like to see the writing of a DSM-5 equivalent, and for political psychology, sociology. Is there such a thing as political sociology? I don't know, but anyway. But basically diagnosing societies along the same ways that we diagnose individuals as being, psychologically disoriented. I think we should have a documented means in order to do the same thing with societies, larger groups. So, and then the other thing I really want to press too is that given this behavior that, you know, um, obviously, like Dr. Nick said, obviously, there does exist expertise, etc. I want to see that expertise clearly integrated into the gaming out of what to do and what not to do. Military strategists do gaming exercises all the time. To what extent are they including psychopathic societies? And, in other words, not just relying on them being rational actors, assuming that they're rational actors. You can't do that with psychopaths. You have to say, what are they likely to do based on how psychopaths can behave, which is, we're not restricted to anything rational. So I would like to have some confidence that that's being taken into account with the gaming out of what to do and what not to do going forward, given Russia's MO. Okay, and I'll shut up again.
Thank you very much for that, Linda. Okay, do you want to know why the Estonians and Finns haven't exercised exclusive economic zone rights over the Gulf of Finland, Jenny?
I do.
Okay, so two concepts to understand. One is innocent passage, and the other is unimpeded passage. Now, the right to innocent passage applies in territorial waters, so out to 12 nautical miles. There are certain things you are allowed to do and certain things you are not allowed to do. So things you're not allowed to do include stuff like military operations, using any weapons system, launching or recovering aircraft, surveillance, by the way, including propaganda, so including broadcasting. So there's a number of kind of hostile things. Oh, interfering with undersea cables is another one you're not allowed to do under innocent passage. Unimpeded passage is what applies in international waters and in exclusive economic zones. Now, unimpeded passage is it's so international waters unimpeded unimpeded passage is default, right? You automatically have the right to overfly. You have the right to transit. Like nobody can dick around with you. Now, the problem with the Gulf of Finland is, and so if you extend your exclusive economic zone out as far as you can, then that right to transit also applies in your exclusive economic zone. You're just not allowed to dig for oil or drill for oil or whatever it is. Now, the problem with the Gulf of Finland is it is a strait. Now, a strait is a body of water that connects one country's exclusive economic zone to any other country's exclusive economic zone, right? So if there is a bit of the sea that has an EEZ in it that connects between two bodies of land to another bit of the sea that has an EEZ in it, then that is a strait. And the Russians have an exclusive economic zone just north of an island off the coast of Finland. I think it's called Gobland or something. Gogland, not to be confused with Gotland. So this makes the Gulf of Finland a strait. Now, at the moment, it is territorial waters of Estonia and Finland out to 12 nautical miles with international water in the middle. Now, both countries could extend their exclusive economic zone to meet in the middle of international waters, but then the right to unimpeded passage would apply. And because it's a strait, unimpeded passage would apply to the whole of the body of water, right? So the territorial, the rights to control, particularly military traffic in territorial waters would cease to exist in the territorial waters of Estonia and Finland because they decided to extend their EEZ across a strait. So that's why they haven't done it. There's an interesting article here in ERR about this, and which is basically Estonian BBC, which quotes a fellow called Alexander Lott, who was with the Norwegian Center for the Law of the Sea. So he knows a few things about the law of the sea. Yeah, so exclusive economic zone, it's basically, it's gives specific restrictions on what a ship is allowed to do in those waters, or rather, specific restrictions on what a state that claims the EEZ is allowed to do in the waters if a ship enters it. So basically, unless it's a slave ship, a pirate ship, it's broadcasting, or it's polluting, then they're not allowed to go anywhere near it. And what extending an EEZ across the Gulf of Finland would do would basically turn the whole of the Gulf of Finland into a regime in which unrestricted passage would apply. So the right of transit under Article 38 of Section 2 of UNCLOS would apply, meaning that all ships and aircraft enjoy the right of transit passage across a strait, which shall not be impeded, except that if the strait, yada, 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 definition of a strait, transit passage means the exercise according to the part of this freedom of navigation and overflight solely for the purposes of continuous and expeditious transit between one or more parts of the high seas. Any activity which is not in the exercise of the right of transit passage remains subject to other applicable provisions of this convention. So that basically means that Russian aircraft and Russian ships would be able to do whatever the heck they want, and nothing, there would be nothing Estonia or Finland could legally do about it if they decided to extend an EEZ across the Gulf of Finland, because the Gulf of Finland is a strait and it connects a Russian exclusive economic zone to the rest of the world. Does that make sense, Jenny?
Yeah. Let's go through the hands and then I have questions because like if you compare it to the Bosphorus Strait, is that an exemption to this rule? Because
no, it's governed by a specific convention, and so is the Gulf of Finland. So the reporting system, and which is quite recent, but there was a series of treaties from like the 1940s to the 1980s between Finland and the Soviet Union, and latterly Estonia as well when the Soviet Union broke up. that govern what exactly is allowed to happen in the Gulf of Finland, they all give, it establishes a reporting system and says that rights of, it essentially cements their status of the channel down the middle as international waters. So basically, the status of the channel down the middle protects the territorial waters of Estonia and Finland and ensures that traffic can only go down that narrow strip. If Estonia or Finland start to dick around with the status quo by extending exclusive economic zones, then the whole of the strait becomes unimpeded passage for the purposes of Article 38, meaning as long as they're going to a place from a place, anyone can sail anywhere in it or fly any aircraft anywhere in it, and there's nothing Estonia or Finland can do to object to it. So basically, in the absence of a convention, the Bosporus would be like that. But there's a specific convention that governs the Bosporus Straits. It's the Montreux Convention.
Okay. Then John, I think you were next. Go ahead.
Yeah, slightly adding to the topic with a different thing, if it's okay. I don't know if we have any Danes here, but there's been a lot of talk recently that we should expect incidents now, right? Like the one we're talking about, but sabotage and other things as well going on. And this week, or within the last week or so, there's been 2 fires in Denmark in Novo Nordisk, which is basically Denmark's biggest company. They make insulin. I think they're world leaders on that. And it happened twice. And that company has 45% of the Danish stock exchange value. So it's quite important to Denmark. And then, so yeah, this of course can't be tied to Russia, but there could be suspicions, of course. And then there was a shopping center in Warsaw that burned down recently. And if the reporting is correct, then the Polish Prime Minister said that he cannot, or they cannot exclude that Russia was involved or behind it. So yeah, things are going down.
Yeah, I remember those 2 fires. That actually, like, so this law, how does it work when you have 2 countries guarding a strait that is, what did you say, then, John? 2 kilometers? Does that mean that anything goes in those waters?
I didn't mention waters.
No,
Sorry.
no, but like I'm thinking about the strait between Sweden and Denmark at the most narrow point. It's like,
Yeah, it's
what
4
did you say?
kilometers. 4 kilometers.
4 kilometers.
Yeah.
There is no way that there could be any territorial water because so Denmark actually has to donate more land to Sweden, so it becomes all Swedish. See what I did there? I'm kidding. Denmark, you can be calm. No, but what happens there? Does that mean that any ship can do whatever the hell they want in those 4 kilometers?
It depends if territorial waters have been claimed, right? So if there is no claim to territorial waters, then the right of, I think it's the right of innocent passage applies. If they do claim, then it's a strait, so the right of unimpeded passage applies. And innocent passage is a lot more restrictive than unimpeded passage. So there's actually a disincentive to claim territory if you're claiming it across the strait. That's the whole point in the law, basically. It's to make it disadvantageous to try and close internationally navigated straits by claiming territorial control.
I'm gonna have to look up that. Go ahead, Matthias.
Yeah, so I have a different topic that I would like to switch to if we are ready for that. That be okay?
Yeah, do it.
Yeah, so there's some good news coming out today. that also has some interesting implications I would kind of inform you about. So the Swedish government made an announcement today, the Swedish Prime Minister, addressing, I think there's a video of him, Twitter video, where he's addressing the Ukrainian people directly, and it has to do with the military support that Sweden is offering to Ukraine. Previously, as all Western nations, there's been, I think it's 15 military support packages so far, but Sweden is now discontinuing the package format and switching to a different format. And that format is a 3-year commitment to fund military aid to Ukraine. I think the total value was something like 6.5 billion euros, so it's quite substantial. And there are a couple of changes here. Number one, it's not going to be a political package format where the political, the ruling coalition supported by the opposition needs to agree on exactly what's going to be in each package. Instead, it's saying, look, let's cut out the middleman. Let's allow Ukraine to order what they need from the military industry in Sweden. Here's a budget. So it's shifting the responsibility from the political end to say, here are our policies, political policies for military aid. Here's the funding. Here's a budget. You have this much money each year. I think it's like just short of 2.5 billion euros. And then it's up to Ukraine to go order and procure what they need from all, So it's basically saying, let's cut out the middleman. Let's just shift to making policy and to fund this. And there was a lot of work that had to be done in order to get this change implemented. It's been worked on for quite a long time. As you can imagine, military procurement, governments ordering stuff from the military industry, is obviously surrounded by a whole lot of red tape. There are conventions in place and compliance regulations, most of which are not geared towards hot wartime conditions, rather peacetime conditions of checking all the boxes, dotting all the I's, and resulting in massive lead times. There are also specific rules and how to actually make a procurement and so forth. So what's been done here is basically simplifying all of that, and for the behalf of Ukraine, they are being given access to already working channels and already working conventions for military procurement, as already agreed upon by the Swedish government, when the Swedish government buys military equipment from the military industry. And there's also, I think, some ongoing efforts to do something similar for other military industrial companies in other countries that are not Swedish. But it's very interesting because it's doing a couple of things. First of all, it's no longer relying on the political debate each time Sweden needs to decide if we should send more, this many more artillery units or this much ammunition or whatever. And then it's basically saying, let's allow Ukraine to just order and we'll just fund the bill. Okay, they can decide what they need. And the second part is the package format is not very well suited for including sustainability and support and spare parts and these kind of things. All the logistics chain requirements for supporting military equipment in Ukraine over the course of a war over years has proven to not be included in the package formats as they have been applied. And this has resulted to weird things like, I'm not just talking about the Swedish military now, I'm talking about all the Western aid packages. It has resulted in things like, well, Ukrainians having a ton of Bradleys, but they don't have spare parts, they can't use it. Over the course of a war, things break, spare parts are needed, and so forth. Also when it comes to training. So this is basically, look, here's the budget, here are the constraints, here are the policies, you guys decide and you go in order. So I think that's really interesting. Obviously, it's good that there's some more news on the political end. The purpose here is to reinforce and put in place a long-term sustainable military support format that reinforces that the Swedish government is willing to support Ukraine for many years. I think it's also interesting as a transition from the package format to something that is more long-term. So I just wanted to share that. I know the Swedish defense minister has some tweets about this where he explains some of the main reasons, so maybe that could be shared. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. Maybe there's some comments on that. Can you hear me?
Yes, I was far away behind many screens. So do the only thing, because I haven't had time to dig through this, do you know if this is like this is the minimum we will give over the 3 years, or is this like this is what we're going to give over the next 3 years? Do you know?
No, so the Swedish defense, yes, the Swedish defense minister was very clear. He explicitly mentioned this. He says this is a floor. We are willing to offer more if more is needed, and the 3-year period is not an end. It's a first step. If Ukraine still needs more after this period, we are willing to fund more. So this is just a shift in format, saying over a longer period of time, this is how much money we're willing to fund, military aid. You guys go ahead. You make your own decisions on what you need more of. And this was also including all military aid. For example, it includes cost of training Ukrainian soldiers. I would imagine, for example, within the UK format, which Swedish military structures have been a part of for many years, together with many other European countries. So it's like saying, here are all the funding costs for all military aid. Here are the pieces, and here's the political policy, and you guys go nuts.
Okay, then this is good news, because I was afraid when I first, because I've only had time to look at the headlines, and looking at the headline, yeah, it looks really good on paper. Sweden is going to give,
yeah. If you go to Paul Jonsson's Twitter account, you can just grab one of his most recent tweets and maybe share that in the nest. It has mostly just summarized well. That's the Swedish defense minister, by the way.
Yeah, this is like, for the past 2 years, I've actually managed to learn some of our ministers' names. Before, I had no clue. I was like, I was lucky if I knew who our prime minister was at times, especially in the 90s. Then I had like no clue whatsoever. I'm like, I hope it's a Swede kind of thing. But now I'm actually more familiar with which some of the ministers, far from all. Paul Jonsson is one of the ones I know. And when I saw the headlines, I was just worried that this would be like, oh, this is what we're going to give. This is set in stone. We're not going to give a dime more above this. But then I'm really happy, because this is the bare minimum that we're going to give over the next 3 years is this is the 75 billion Swedish crowns, which is awesome. I think.
I sent the link to you, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't really had time to read through them as carefully as I would like to. I used to think that so I have co-hosted other spaces on a different app, and there I only needed to go in when the ad hominem started flying, and then I had to go and yell at people. Here I'm a lot more active, and I know I'm a woman, but even I have limitations. I know it's shocking. Uh, I have not yet mastered fully paying attention to what people are saying and reading articles, highly technical articles at the same time.
No, I just meant I just sent it to you now, like seconds ago.
Oh,
so no worry.
Yeah, super thank you. So if I don't this is like a public service announcement. If I don't read and respond straight away to you sending a message, it's probably because I am um I I I am trying to be a good co-host. I'm doing my very best at doing this. Uh some days I feel better about myself than others. Uh, um I don't know who shut up their hand first. I'm gonna go with Linda, then John.
I'll try to be fast. Jenny, I love the idea of Sweden and Denmark. That historically contested territory in the northern part of Denmark and the southern part of Sweden, and so maybe there could be an agreement where part of Sweden, the southern part of Sweden, the important part of Sweden, could be gifted to Denmark, right?
Yeah,
Maybe for 25 years, and then like every 25 years it would go back, and then part of Denmark would be gifted to Sweden, right? And so it could flip flop back, and I mean that's just a mutual understanding between Sweden and Denmark, right? And now if Sweden then if that passed through, between what is now Sweden and Denmark, if that became through only Sweden, then I would think that that might cause some new convention that would lay out the ground rules of who passed and who didn't pass through the territory of Sweden. Now, and then on the aside, by the way, I'm half Swede from the southern part of Sweden, and there's family stuff that supposedly the huge farm, blah 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 blah, and who would basically owned by the Danes in the southern part of Sweden was our family, and there was royalty involved, and it's a huge farm, and supposedly the farm is still there, the location anyway is still there, and we're secretly Danish, at least part, but we keep that under wraps anyway. So that's the story. So anyway, so yeah, there's a checkered history between Sweden and Denmark, but maybe that could be utilized. And since Sweden and Denmark are friends now, yeah, pass territory back and forth, and we do it every 25 years or so. And just because of its, for example, just because it's Danish territory on what yesterday was Swedish territory, doesn't mean that there can't be an additional side agreement that Danish territory that's in Sweden civilly, can be run. Denmark can say, well, Sweden, even though it's our territory, Sweden, you can run it. You can make civil laws, and civil laws and civil taxes, et cetera, et cetera. That's separate and apart. That's a side deal, right? That's separate at heart, has nothing to do with anything. We are allowing you to run that part of Denmark as Sweden, as if it were Sweden, but it is Swedish territory, at least for the next 25 years. Anyway, that's my thoughts.
We fought wars for 900 years.
Yep.
So I just don't think, even though we've buried the hatchet, and now we joke and trash each other to each other's faces, nobody else, like except the Nordics, get to be in on these jokes. I don't even think the Baltics get in on this. And I've also come to learn that 4 nations out of 5 make fun of Sweden, and Sweden makes fun of 4 out of 5 nations. So we trash all of them except ourselves, obviously, because we're Sweden, and then the other make fun of us more than anybody else. So, and I recommend that everybody, if you want to understand the complicated relationship with Denmark, watch the movie Stockholm's Bloodbath. That explains the particular animosity between Sweden and Denmark. Denmark put a Danish king on the Swedish throne and killed off all the nobles. So this would be a very, very hard thing to do. I think that Denmark would oppose this pretty much as the Swedes would, because it's a very sensitive topic. Then John, go ahead.
Yeah, I was about to sound alarm that we have a troll on board. Linda, come on, to give Sweden to Denmark. What are you even talking about? At least let Sweden have Denmark first, for the first 20 years, and then we see if we give it back. And honestly, I don't think that would change anything because it's still a strait, and there probably would be some legal, some legality still to use it. But anyway, and for all the Swedes, that would be a typical Åsa-Nisse-lösning. It would maybe work, but it will be complicated. But then regarding the package from Sweden, or the announcement from Sweden, that's great news. 25 billion SEK per year for 3 years, a lot of money for us. But I also assume, do you know that, Matthias, if this is exclusively military support, meaning there's still the sort of budgetary support, bilateral budgetary support that will probably be added to that, plus whatever we do through the EU. So it wouldn't be limited to 25, because currently we give them more than 25, I think, per year. I'm not sure. I think so.
I'm looking at the press message here directly from the Swedish government, and they're mentioning this is 75 billion Swedish kroner in military aid for Ukraine. That's the headline. And they're mentioning about 25 billion Swedish per year in military support. So that's the wording here. So it's defense material and supporting financial support when buying military hardware. It's for training, and the way I'm reading this, it's military aid specifically.
Thanks.
That is kind of interesting. So does it say anything in there that they have to buy Swedish material? Like, so we're giving them 25 billion and they have to buy, not, these are excellent systems, just saying. But could they buy Gripen with this money?
So it's not a long press message. I can actually read it here. So Ukraine's struggle against Russia's war of invasion is continuing. Sweden will support Ukraine's fight as long as it takes. By the way, the Swedish Prime Minister today, he was specifically talking about Ukrainian victory. That's been the policy for a long time. And the press message says, well, to strengthen the Swedish support to Ukraine and also to increase the long-term sustainability of that same. The government and the political party that supports the ruling coalition are agreeing to start creating a financial financial. Well, the word here is basically a financial boundary for the okay, I can't. Never mind. How much money we're going to spend on this for the years 2024 to 2026. We are going to increase that support, and that financial boundary is now up to 75 billion Swedish kronor in military aid for these years. And with this proposal, the total military and civilian support from Sweden to Ukraine will be more than 100 billion Swedish kronor. Also, again, indicating that this part is military aid, and on top of that, there's financial civilian support. And it will be happening in the form of donations of military equipment, financial support, and financial support when procuring defense material. Depending on what type of support that will be used, for example, if it's delivery of replacement procurement, this financial leeway might have to, they're talking about what years on the budget it will have to be organized into. So specifics on the financial side. With the invasion of Russia of Ukraine, the security situation in Europe is the most serious since the Second World War. This means that countries are increasing their military spending on their own territory. That needs to continue at the same time as the support for Ukraine is happening. ruling coalition are agreeing that the support to Ukraine will need to be done in a way that building Swedish military capability is not threatened, and that other necessary reforms needs to still take place. For this support not to be violating our own national security, defense spending, and increasing capability, etc. So it's basically saying we need to ensure our own security, but through European security. That's what they're saying.
Thank you for reading that statement. Then John, go ahead.
Yeah, two things to add to that. First, actually, this is if you read, there's a grey box below the press release for the background, and it says that so far we have given 35 billion. Now everything here is in SEK, obviously, it's not dollars. So 37 billion since February 2022. So that's over 2 years. So that means we're now doubling the support for Ukraine. If I'm not counting wrong here, calculating wrong, which is great. That's actually really good. And also, it also says that, as you said there at the end, Matthias, that this will not be allowed to have impact on other investments and needs. So, and that means that they will actually scrap this budgetary. There's some budgetary rules which has applied for many years to keep the finance in check. So now they're actually allowing for overrunning, borrowing more money, basically. It looks like than previously was allowed. So yeah, step in the right direction.
Yeah, I know what you're referring to. There's a convention for many years, ever since the financial disasters in the 90s, that any budget proposition from any ruling coalition or ruling coalition that wants to be the ruling coalition, right? You need to present a financial budget that actually is fully funded. But that's like a domestic convention. I'm not sure this is as that much, bearing on the foreign policy part of this. But yeah, I don't know that there's nothing mentioned about that there, John. But I think that's a domestic Swedish political conversation.
I thought it was to do with the EU regulations. Okay. Anyway, thanks.
Thank you, both of you. I'm really looking forward to see what the next package, and I hope that the package that they sent in February is not included in this, because it would be 25 billion this year, and I hope that that package is not included in this portion, that this is excluding the 15th package that they announced and sent in February. Tim, are you under fire in your foxhole, or are you there?
Sorry, no, I'm just answering a whole bunch of DMs about UNCLOS. Apparently, everybody thinks I'm an expert now. Amazing how this works, isn't it?
Of course you are the. I just muted myself. I am so technical. Of course you're the experts. I'm happy that other people see your brilliance too now.
Very good, very good. Would you like a nice upbeat story?
Yes.
So, some of you, especially the Brits among you and the environment fanciers among you, will have heard of ULEZ. This is the Ultra Low Emission Zone. This is a scheme by Mayor of London to reduce particulate emissions in the Greater London area by basically fining the drivers of older diesel, particularly diesel vehicles, if they want to drive around London. It's a bit like the congestion charge, but it's scaled according to the particulate emissions impact of the vehicle you drive. Now, these fines apply to basically diesel cars over 15 years old, right? So if you want to drive a diesel car over 15 years old, you have to pay like £12 or something for every day that you drive it. So what they have done though is that if you drive a car that falls foul of the new ULEZ scheme, the government gives you like £5,000 or something if you scrap your car and buy a new one. So what was the effect of this? The effect of this was that tens of thousands of vehicles, a lot of them four-wheel drives and vans and larger, more practical vehicles, were going to be scrapped. Now, who might need a whole bunch of four-wheel drives, Jenny, and not really care what kind of state they were in regarding the upholstery?
Mm, well, I think both parties involved in the genocidal war in Ukraine would need them, but I'm hoping we're only giving one side of them.
Precisely. So the goodies, the Ukrainians, they are always on the lookout for four-wheel drives. I've driven a number of them to Ukraine myself, and they're always very gratefully received. And you may remember we did a segment with Ragnar Suss, who is an Estonian businessman who runs the NAFO 69th Sniffing Brigade. He basically bought every 10-year-old Hilux in Europe and sent it to Ukraine. And I've driven for him a couple of times. So there's this kind of endless demand for these vehicles. They're very, very useful. They're not particularly survivable because they're not armored in any way. So basically, if you put a few rounds through the engine block, then that's the end of your car to all intents and purposes. So lots of these needed, lots of them get destroyed, insatiable demand for that kind of low-level mobility. So immediately people started saying, well, instead of throwing all of these 15-year-old diesel cars and pickup trucks and things on the scrap heap, why don't you send them to Ukraine? To which the mayor of London immediately said, no, that would be illegal. And so it stopped. Then eventually, the real boss, the Secretary of State for Communities and Local Government, or whatever he's calling himself this week, told the Mayor of London where he could stick that idea and said that actually it's not illegal and you can send them to Ukraine. Now, today, there was for some reason a delay because they resolved this in like February or something like that. They have so far received more than 100. The scheme has so far received more than 100 vehicles since the 15th of March, and around half of them have been delivered, half of those that have been donated. Now, the British Ukrainian Aid, which is a charity operating, which is working with Transport for London, which is the London Transport Authority, has said that a convoy of 20 vehicles has arrived in Ukraine over the weekend, and there are another 13 vehicles en route from the UK at the moment. They are to be used for medical and humanitarian purposes, and they include vehicles of various types. Apparently including several retired ambulances, which I think is always welcome. So yeah, the Mayor of London commented. British Ukrainian Aid commented that we are enormously grateful for the support given to us by the mayors of both London and Kiev. Is it still that boxer who's the mayor of Kiev, Jenny? What's his name? Klitschko?
Yes.
He's
Yeah.
still the boss. Okay.
Yes.
Would be very interesting to see Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, and Klitschko side by side, because Sadiq Khan is really, really small, and Klitschko is like really massive. So it would be, that would be an interesting thing. Anyway, I don't know if they've ever met. I would imagine, I don't know, Rishi Sunak's quite small as well, so I imagine he studiously avoids meeting really tall politicians unless he's able to stand on a box. Anyway, that aside, British Ukrainian aid they've said we're enormously grateful for the support given to us to Transport for London and to our many partners, supporters, and donors. The vehicles that would have gone to scrap are saving lives in Ukraine. We know that every one of them is valued and valuable. It is great to see people showing Dunkirk spirit, making transport available to those under threat from a ruthless enemy. Now, the spokesperson for the head of Transport for London Strategy and Planning said yada, 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 particulate emissions. Londoners are also demonstrating their concern to others by choosing to provide vital aid for the most unimaginable circumstances in Ukraine. We encourage anyone eligible to donate their vehicle if you can. So, there you have it, guys. The ULEZ scrappage scheme, Vehicles for Ukraine, is all singing and all dancing. So if you are in London and you have a car that falls foul of ULEZ and you think it would be the sort of vehicle that the Ukrainians would find useful, I think they find all sorts of vehicles useful. So if it's got at least 3 wheels and goes, and you would otherwise have to scrap it or pay a fine, then contact British Aid for Ukraine and donate your vehicle. It's a no-brainer. What do you think of that, Jenny?
I think that's amazing. We should also have a group of the Ukrainian soldiers go up to the mechanized unit E19 in Boden, because what they do every year is they have a bunch of conscripts. They get to have an AK-5 and they get to shoot up the engine block of a car. And then it's up to the mechanics in the unit to fix this thing with WD-40, duct tape, and zip ties. And the car has to be running for, I think the minimum time is things like half an hour or something, because that will give them time to get out of whatever danger zone they are in that made the engine block get shut up. And yeah, they have to, and they have to work with whatever they have in that they would have in a hot zone. I think it's hilarious, and they do it. They manage to do this. So just added, because regardless of what anybody thinks, we joke and say that in case of an invasion, if Russia comes, Sweden will activate its dark fleet of tanks, the Volvo brigade, but they're not really armored. I wish they were, but you would think that they were. They were kind of hard to put a dent in back in the day when they were made out of actual steel. Today they're made out of something else, so they're a little bit easier to dent. But they were really good back in the day.
Can
And
can I jump on that, Jenny, really quick?
yeah, go ahead.
And bring up again Ilsa, my 1985 Volvo 245. Yes, she was a tank and she was beloved. She was, if she were a dog, she'd be a bulldog, I think. But yeah, best road car ever. And she had a long life. She had a very long life. She eventually died peacefully. Anyway,
I mean, that sounds like a very cool thing, Jenny. I'm kind of reminded of military exchanges during my time in the army. Military exchanges, like where you go and do a training exercise with an allied country. The best country to get was obviously America, right? Because when the United States Army or whichever service branch you were dealing with get told they're getting a whole bunch of Brits to do a joint exercise with, they're like, right, what cool stuff can we show them? Like, what's the coolest thing we have in the US Army that we can impress these guys with, like as an activity? So, the automatic grenade launchers come out. You get to blow loads of stuff up. You get to, fast rope out of helicopters, all of the coolest, like, army stuff you can think of. They just lay on, and with their apparently unlimited budget. Now, the thing about military exchanges like that is they go both ways. And at some stage, the poor bastards you were exercising with, who showed you all this cool stuff, have to come to the United Kingdom and do an exercise. And our budget is not unlimited. So the things we get them to do are basically just miserable. Now, one, we had U.S. Marine Force Recon. We did a mutual exercise with them, and then they came the other way. And they'd shown us the coolest stuff you can possibly imagine. It was bloody brilliant. We blew up so much stuff. Mini guns, grenade launchers. It was just awesome. And they came the other way, and so we sent them to Gairloch Head. Now, Gairloch Head. How to describe Gairloch Head? It's a bit of Scotland. Have you seen Lawrence of Arabia, Jenny?
I might have, but it was a long time ago.
Now, there's an interesting bit of a large part of the film is about the Battle of Aqaba. Now, Aqaba was an Ottoman-controlled port in the Gulf of Aqaba, which drains into the Red Sea, and it was thought to be unassailable by land, because to get to it, you would have to cross the Wadi Rum, which is one of the most arid places on Earth. It's one of the hottest and least hospitable places on Earth. And there's an interesting scene where I think it was Omar Sharif, who played Sharif Ali. I think it was Omar Sharif. Said to Lawrence of Arabia, he said, "Yeah, this is the worst place God created." And Gairloch Head is the second worst place God created. I'm pretty sure mosquitoes were invented there. It's this it's a lock head in Scotland, so a kind of a lock drains into the sea. The sides of the hills are almost vertical, and they still manage to be boggy despite being almost vertical hills. I don't know how they do that. It's in the winter, it is sideways rain all of the time. And in the summer, you just get eaten by insects, and it's still sideways rain. It's just not quite as cold, which, if anything, is slightly worse because it means you can't put any clothes on because you get too hot. So, anyway, in exchange for their lovely hospitality, we sent the poor old US Marines up to Gairloch Head for 2 weeks, and they really hated it. Anyway, little aside for you, Jenny. I hope you enjoyed that.
I do, because it reminds me. So the US buys courses, training from Sweden because Arctic warfare, you know, and we send the poor bastards up to above, sometimes to a place that God forgot called Arvidsjaur. It's a community of maybe 10,000, and that is including, like the gazillions of military personnel that switches out because they're conscripts. And this is where we train our army rangers that are rarely on base. Um, but the funny thing is, they come in the summer. And I don't blame them because I wouldn't choose to go there in the winter either. It's like -30 and you have to dig yourself a place to sleep in the snow. You will be knee deep in snow both ways, going uphill both ways, and it will be cold and miserable. But I've always wondered about the Arctic training that goes on up there in the summertime. And I'm like, you're not going to learn anything because you can drink from, like, if you find a spring, you can drink from it. It's not that polluted up there because there are not enough humans to pollute it, but there are mosquitoes there too. So I just think it's so funny. Um, but they do have cool exercises. Like whenever they put on a show, which they do once a year, where they have a tank and they're like, so next time if you ever see a tank on the road, think twice before you cut them off in traffic. And then they have a tank that drives over to Volvo station wagons and they become flatter than a flat can. like when they use stomped on when the tanks are done. It's yeah, you learn if you've ever seen this display, you learn like, ah, I'm gonna be late for work today because I am not cutting off a tank. There would be nothing left of me if I tried to do this. And those they can climb. They have no problem climbing up on your car. I don't care what you drive. So, but no, we don't have these grenade launchers. We have the archers. I can offer you archers. They go boom too.
Do 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 do. No, that's the Archers. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Who was next? I think it
Then
was
John.
John, wasn't it?
Yeah, he has waited really patiently. Thank you.
Damn right. And I forgot what I was going to talk about. But yeah, Jenny,
Volvo.
Yeah, Volvo. But let's finish with the Arvidsjaur and up there, probably uninhabited areas of Sweden. So winter, yeah, bad, cold, bad, but mosquitoes, Jenny, it's 10,000 times worse than cold. You can actually dress for cold, but mosquitoes, yeah, you can dress as well. But when it's warm and you cover yourself, it's terrible. Winter is better than summer up there. Yeah, regarding Volvo, I have personal first-hand experience of this tank qualities of a Volvo 245. We hit a Honda Civic from behind. The Volvo was buffing out, literally. The Honda Civic went a couple of kilometers to the scrapyard. So yeah, it's a good car, but not very nice, honestly, Linda. I know you have burning heart for Sweden and all that, but yeah, I don't know, Volvo.
We used to joke about the tank division, the private tank division of Volvo, and said that every Volvo at wartime, you are able to go to your nearest Volvo dealer and you will get a complimentary flamethrower that is roof mounted. It is not true. No, we lost Tracy. Steven, go ahead.
Oh, many thanks. So would the flamethrower be, I wonder, to melt the snow in advance of the vehicle? But yes. Just a very brief thing, Tim. I loved your stories, and you were very nearly accurate. It was the Nefud Desert, not Wadi Rum, that was the worst place God created. The sun's anvil, which is to the south of Wadi Rum. Wadi Rum is actually a wonderful place, and certainly easily traversable, though certainly can be hot. But no, Wadi Rum was where Lawrence and Ali and the forces of the Hashemite Prince Faisal met and rallied the forces of Auda Abu Tai in both the film and in history. Historical fact. Anyhow, but no, generally quite amusing. But I can concur, and having been to both Wadi Rum and I haven't been to the Nefud Desert. Wadi Rum and Gerlach, that Gerlach Head, especially when the midge is out, yes, the worst place God created. So anyway, sorry, just a couple of small wrinkles. Thanks.
I was close enough.
So there's a poem that the conscripts in Boden say, and I'm going to translate it afterwards. Det finns en plats på jorden där solen aldrig ler. Den platsen heter Boden, dit vill jag aldrig mer. And translated, it says, there's a place on earth called Boden. No, there's a place on earth where the sun never shines. That place is called Boden, and I will never want to return there. It rhymes in Swedish, not in English. And that is where I lived for 15 years, but the sun does shine. Some years there have been a temperature difference between summer and winter of 70 degrees Celsius. We had minus 35 in the winter, and we had plus 35 in the summer. It was insane. Then John, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm really curious. Who did you talk to, Jenny? Because you're extremely talkative when you were up there. You must have been talk of the town, basically. Yeah, you have to explain. They don't say much up there, by the way.
So I worked as a customer service rep. You have to talk to people, and they want to talk to you. I was really good at my job too. I calmed the customers down. So, but yeah, it's a myth that they are not talkative. But the myth that is true about the Northerners in Sweden is it's a very close-knit community. After 15 years, I was still the new arrival. And I asked them, I'm like, don't I get to lose? Like after 10 years, you keep calling me the new arrival. I've been here 10 years. When do I get to lose this? And they're like, when a new person moves in, then they become the new arrival until another person moves in. And so you're perpetually the new arrival until somebody imports somebody up there. That was also a nickname, the import wife. Lovely times. Do
Although
you have
speaking of joint military exercises and Arabs, we did a similar exchange with Emirati Special Forces, and that was a fun one. Now, how to describe Emirati Special Forces? Um, are you a Spanish speaker by any chance, Jenny?
I am.
You know the word Hidalgo.
Yes.
So it's a Spanish term. It's an abbreviation of Hijo Dalgo, which means son of somebody. So it means kind of, son of somebody. Um, Emirati Special Forces were sons of somebody, right? So they were there because of who they were, rather than what they were strictly capable of. So they were quite a relaxed outfit, shall we say? And their accommodation during this 2-week exercise in the UK was they had the most tricked out camper vans I've ever seen. And they were staying in these when we were all living in holes in the ground. And they were there with their lobster and all of that stuff in their amazing RV things. So yeah, that was nice for them anyway.
Well, that's kind of funny. um, we didn't have so many people doing exchanges up there because they were in the regiment of Boden is actually encompassing, pretty much all of the north of Sweden, and they have bases all over. And for the most part, when they want to get trained in Sweden, they go to the special forces. You have the paratroopers, you have the mountaineers, and then you have the regular army rangers up there. They want to train them in the harshest climate possible, and they sleep outdoors most of their, I think it's 15-month training, could be 18 months as well. So during that time, there will be winter at some point, and they still don't spend all of their time on base, from the rumors I've heard. Then, John, go ahead.
Wrong again, Jenny. During this time, there will be summer sometime because it's mainly winter, isn't it?
There, our summer, yeah, there will be summer. We used to joke about my, I guess, grandfather-in-law. He takes off his long johns, his thermal underwear, the day before midsummers, and he puts them back on the day after because he got very cold. So it our summers are short and intensive. Enough about that. I am excited about this package, or this announcement that Sweden made, because this gives a lower level that is, from what I understand, guaranteed. I could be wrong about the guarantee part, but I don't think so. And this is why they made the announcement. And this is also something that is across all parties. This is approved by all parties in Sweden. It doesn't matter if they're in the opposition or not. Everybody wants to help fund Ukraine, which I think is a really great thing. Usually, we have heard a lot in the past about where it hasn't been the case, where they get along and agree on the funding of Ukraine. Um, I have also seen some advertisement on YouTube, specifically designed for Swedes, about the EU election that is coming up now on the 9th of June, where they talk about like do your research and make sure that you pick a candidate that is very pro Ukraine, because we don't want to lose the we don't want to lose the support that Ukraine has gained here in Sweden. We don't want to start messing with that. So that is really amazing. Do you want to do another shameless plug before you take off, Tim, for the
I
fundraiser?
I think we should, yeah, because we have the ever able Tracy and Aaron and Alan coming up to relieve us very shortly, and they have a guest. So we want to get out of their way quickly before we get caught up in their guest segment and trampled underfoot. So before I drop and make way for Tracy, I will please just draw your attention to the tweet in the nest. Now, we are raising money to keep Kharkiv's critical infrastructure up and running by providing solar power units for the hospitals and medical centers in Kharkiv city, which has been under relentless attack by the Russian invader for months now, severely compromising their electrical infrastructure. So far, we have raised 17,000, a little over 17,000 bucks. It'll be more than that by now because I plugged the fundraiser at least once and you all opened your wallets like the good people you are. And I'm also pleased to report that we are now preparing the first 3 of the generators that will be sent. So we're looking for 3 complete units and we are almost there on the funding. Things are already in motion, but we do need just a bit of extra money. So if you could please dig deep, get your wallets out, as I said, and together let's power Kharkiv. Resilience is the name of the game. Let's keep their medics doing their vital work, and of course, keep an eye out for the cards because we want to get some doctors, nurses, etc., from Kharkiv to come up and have a chat with you all once again. We had them up a couple of weeks ago, but we will aim to get them on once again. We will, of course, publish photos and regular updates of our progress on the solar power system front on our main account as well. So MriyaReport.org, chuck us over a one-off donation or set up a regular donation. We will ensure that we save lives in Ukraine together. So on that note, that's us for the North Sea Empire. We're ending a little early to make way for Tracy and Alan. It's been a pleasure co-hosting with you today, as always, Jenny. And as always, indeed, Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Tim, and Ram Slava. It has been an amazing afternoon. We have had really exciting topics, and I hope that you who have been in the listening have also enjoyed today's topic. We discussed Russia's attempt at trying to take over water. They're trying to steal water from Lithuania and Finland. Uh, we're going to see where this goes, and I'm curious about the response. And also, we heard that Sweden has allocated money for Ukraine that will go to military aid. So, again, I just want to say thank you, everyone who came and kept us company, and especially great things for anybody that comes up and talks to me and Tim. This is the best way of, if you're tired of my voice or God forbid Tim's, come up and talk to us because we will listen to you instead. I prefer to have discussions. I learn so much more when I hold discussions with other people, and I get to see things from a different point of view that I or may not have realized existed. I apparently didn't think about it that way. So you guys teach me things every single day, and thank you for that. And I'm just going to keep on talking until I see Tracy or Alan come up and keep me company. And I will drop too. Tracy is partially here. Yay, Tracy's up. I'm going to hand over the reins to you now, Tracy. Good luck this afternoon. And I'm going to be staying and listening to your exciting guest, Slava Ukraini.
Hello, Slava, and thank you so much, Jenny, and of course, thank you to Tim too. It is very much appreciated. As Tim and Jenny said, we will be having a guest. The amazing Alan is coming up to join me, of course, and we are, well, lucky enough to be having a wonderful guest. We are going to be joined, and we are going to get an exciting update as well, so that's something will be happening. So we will be joined very shortly by our special guest, Konstantin Lihanenko. He is the Deputy Director of the Department of Economy and International Relations at Kharkiv Military Administration. So we will be getting the information direct from on the ground, and we will also, I think, be lucky enough to be getting, well, maybe just a little bit of an update about the generators. What do you think about that, Alan? Welcome. Okay, so Alan is just doing the switcheroo, and we shall continue. So go ahead and give us a retweet, everybody, if you would not mind, because as I said, we're going to be joined by a very special guest. We are going to be giving you an update from what's going on the ground in Kharkiv. Well, of course, Konstantin will, because he's going to be telling us, hopefully, the situation there. So we are very privileged, of course, to be able to get this direct feedback and just to hear some information about the generators that you have all been fundraising for here. So I'm very excited about this interview. And it seems like we have been joined by our guest. So I would like to say welcome to Konstantin Lihanenko. Good day to you, sir. Welcome to the MriyaReport.
Friends, hi everyone.
Hello, it's very good to hear you today, sir. So I am Tracy, and I am joined by my fellow co-host, Alan. Good day to you, Alan. Welcome.
Good morning, Tracy. Good morning, Konstantin. Let's be sure everyone can hear us, Tracy. I could hear Konstantin loud and clear. I think you could too. I want to be sure he can hear us as well.
Yes, I hear. All is well. Thank you, Alan. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Really looking forward to our time with you this morning. Excuse me, on MriyaReport. Tracy, I think you should take the lead here.
Thank you so much, Alan, and welcome everybody. And we are now joined as well by the amazing leader. Welcome, leader. Good day to you.
Good morning, Slava Ukraini.
Heroem Slava.
Heroem Slava.
Konstantin, I welcome you to the space here, and I wanted you to know how this amazing group of people on the MriyaReport, all know how to say Slava Ukraini and Heroem Slava and more, like Smert Vorogam.
The most important part, leader. Thank you so much. Go ahead, sorry.
We are very honored to thank you, guys.
The thanks is all on our part. It's an absolute privilege and an honour to be able to speak with you today, and for our listeners to be able to hear some direct feedback from you on the ground. We follow, of course, everything as much as we are possibly able to from a distance, and we try to bring, of course, the accurate news to our listeners 24/7, and of course counter the nonsense and the propaganda. Now, Now, I wonder, Konstantin, before we go into the interview, if you have an update that you would like to share with our listeners about the generators they have all been fundraising for here at MriyaReport.
So about generators in Kharkiv region, we are working all day, all night about to take some generators for our social and medical infrastructure to help them to work state 24/7. And I'm sorry, can I start about introduce myself for 1 minute?
Yes, please go ahead. Thank you so much.
So hi everyone, my friends. My name is Konstantin Lihanenko. I'm a deputy director of the Department of Economics and International Relations, the Kharkiv Regional Military Administration. First of all, thank you for inviting us to speak. I'm here with my team. It's Anessa and Irina. In such times, it's crucial for us not only to have a chance to express our views, but also to be heard. Today, I want to thank you all, including MriyaReport, for collecting donation and helping Ukraine, especially the Kharkiv region.
Well, the pleasure is all ours. It's an absolute privilege and an honour to be able to help in this small way that we do in our community together. So thank you for allowing us to be able to do that. It's very important to our listeners here to know that they are helping people directly. Would you like to explain the situation for our listeners on the ground in Kharkiv right now?
Yes, of course. The city continues to experience regular shelling and missile strikes from Russia forces. These attacks target not only military installations, but also civilian infrastructure. It's very important, including residential buildings, schools, hospitals, and essential services. There have been numerous casualties, injuries among civilians, with emergency service struggling to respond to the constant threats. Russians tend to use double tap strikes to mock more casualties with the civilians and critical infrastructure workers. Emergency state service and medical and police workers. The most recent one was on Sunday, with six dead and 28 injured people, unfortunately.
Yes, it's absolutely tragic. We see this every single day. We notice that the intensity of the attacks has increased, especially in the last few weeks. Can you speak about that at all?
You mean after the last attacks on our energy infrastructure or no?
Yeah, so we see that the attacks have increased on the energy infrastructure and on other critical infrastructure in Kharkiv over the last few weeks, and the increase in the use of the aerial bombs also.
I have some information about the last attacks at the March. After the last attacks of our energy infrastructure, more than 700 people, subscribers in the Kharkiv region, have been left without electricity. It's a very big problem for now, for Kharkiv and Ukraine. And the city feels the consequences up until now. The largest thermal power plant in the region has been completely destroyed, if you know, and the region does not have its own electricity generation. This has also affected medical institutions. They are now forced to operate on generators and power banks as life goes on. And for example, regional centers work and welcome new lives 24/7. For city residents, power outages are mainly manifested in fun power outages throughout the city.
Thank you so much. This is very important, I think, for our listeners to hear how it's impacting. How do you feel this is impacting you preparing for extra pressure on the energy system, the power supply? Hot weather is coming, and of course you need to prepare for winter heating season too, even though we are still in summer period.
So about prepared, we are doing it now for the Kharkiv region. Kharkiv Oblast, we have partnership with different funds. It's maybe about charity foundation, and make some work to have the generators, include the MriyaReport, have doing something interesting for us. It's have generators to our healthcare institution and social institutions. It's very thank you for you. And maybe I don't know all information of our Kharkiv Oblast administration, but I know that more of the foundation helping today to our Kharkiv region, and we do more work now to help people for the winter and future, and to save some of these institutions.
Thank you so much. I think, again, it's important for listeners to understand that even given the critical situation you are dealing with right now, you still have other preparations to make for the winter and for the heating period, because this is very important. Can you speak about the generators themselves that we are raising funds for here, how they are helping provide critical services for people in Kharkiv?
I know about your help for Kharkiv region. It's very cool because you help important healthcare institutions, and I see that people who are working in this institution have an electricity and can make the operation with people and help them to given a good healthcare and have electricity 24/7.
Thank you so much, Lida.
Sure, thank you. I can also comment a little bit because we have now a lot of experience with one of the maternity type hospitals there, and they've been using this technology for over a year. They recently received 2 more of the devices to sort of complete their initial ask, and that's from another donor, Heidi Rickles, Rotary, who came up and spoke when the doctors were on. The 5 women doctors were on the show. So, in addition, the same technology has been deployed in civilian uses at invincibility points recently through that same donor, and through another donor, Sergei Sumlenny, also from him and his campaign. A number of these smaller units were sent and deployed in buildings where actually one of the missile strikes had basically forced over 200 people to leave their apartment complex and head to a different building. And so those were deployed in the lobby. Maybe, well, you all on the show know Ernest Polanski and Richard, who was on yesterday. So their volunteer team were the ones actually deploying those, and they put the solar panels on the roof and set that up. And there have been some very heartwarming photos and videos that are soon to be compiled into a longer video that will go public with all these different types of deployments in Kharkiv.
Thank you so much, Lida. Alan, would you like to add anything here?
Well, I do have a follow-up question for Konstantin. You mentioned the double tap strikes that the Russians use. I'm wondering, how does this affect the emergency workers, the first responders in Kharkiv? Is there anything they do to prepare for such a double strike? Anything they can do, or do they just take this in stride?
Yes, Irina, want to have a question for you.
Yeah, hello to everyone. My dad works in state emergency service, so I know a little bit of information about it. It's an unfortunate situation for us, for the state emergency services, because in recent attacks on the 4th of April, it killed 3 of my dead colleagues, and it was a hard situation for us, a hard night. So from now on, all of the colleagues, all of the workers of emergency state service, they wear helmets, more helmets. They have more helmets, more equipment to go to have on, to wear, to put on. Yes, and they are hiding if there is an air raid sirens.
Yes.
So they are hiding in the building, and they can't help other people. It's controversial, but the lives of our state emergency service workers are more. It's not more valuable. It's just more practical to hide, to make them hide during the air raid sirens. So that's an update.
Thank you so much. You actually remind me of something that I saw yesterday regarding that, just a very similar, the White Angels evacuating people and having to hide in places because they are being chased by drones, and Russia is trying to attack them whilst they evacuate people. And unfortunately, an incident yesterday where a police officer's car was attacked with a drone. Fortunately, he was okay, and he was also evacuated by his colleagues. So you remind me of this. It's exactly the same. Thank you so much for sharing these insights. I think, Alan, it's very important that our listeners hear these things.
Yes, it's absolutely important for listeners around the world to hear from Ukrainians themselves, who, especially from Kharkiv right now, but from anywhere in Ukraine, anywhere on the front line. Konstantina, another question for you and your colleagues. I was inspired to read reports of the new underground protected schools for Kharkiv's school children. I wonder if you could share just a little bit about those schools, the children studying there, the teachers teaching there. This is a way for them to continue as normal a life, as normal a routine as possible. What's been the effect on these Kharkiv school children and their teachers and their families?
So I know about the metro school. It's the first experience in the world. It's very unique. And about some details of this work, how it works in some in metro, I can't speak with you because it's another department. And this department more know about this. It's a department of education, but we are department of international ships and economy. So I know that children from Kharkiv can study offline study now by the metro. It's a very good idea because more people, more children of Kharkiv region don't have offline study and use Zoom for lessons. I think it's very bad, really. Efficient. Yes, it's inefficient. So I know that this is not high school, it's middle. Yes, it's middle school. And about the count of children, yes, who study, I don't know really because I don't have a statistic, unfortunately. So, but this project is really very good for our Kharkiv children now.
Thanks very much for that answer. Just one more general question about residents in Kharkiv. How are residents of Kharkiv managing to make their daily life as normal as possible, or is that even possible?
I can say for our Kharkiv people and about us, about our department. So our department office is working on improving the connections between the Kharkiv Regional Military Administration and the communities of the Kharkiv region to secure future international technical assistance. We are signing various memorandums with the international organization and charitable foundations to legally ensure the provision of aid, attending meetings and writing some letters to diplomatic institutions, among other activities. Nowadays, our typical day includes an additional task: step into the corridor several times a day to avoid being injured by shrapnel in case of an attack. However, when moving to a bomb shelter or a safer place, our work does not stop. Air raid arms can last up to 90 hours a day, working under such conditions to helping people no matter that. So about citizens, it's same situation in Kharkiv. We work, stay, and Kharkiv.
I've seen videos of Kharkiv residents at sidewalk cafes, having cups of coffee, going to the store, going to work, of course, and the school children going to these protected underground schools. I just think that the resilience of the Kharkiv residents I've seen is remarkable and inspiring. In working with international representatives of aid groups, of philanthropic groups, what has the response been? Has Kharkiv been made a priority by these international groups, or is Kharkiv simply another place in Ukraine in a long line of places needing help from the international community?
I want to continue about living Kharkiv. I want to say that we don't have another way, and we love our city, very love our city. So about international nations and support and others, so the international community has responded to the situation in Kharkiv with a mix of humanitarian aid and diplomatic support. In Kharkiv, we have the Coordination Humanitarian Center, where a lot of international organizations help people from Volchansk. Now you know about the situation, and other border cities with vital products, because these people don't even have documents or spare clothes. While the response has been significant, the situation in Kharkiv remains challenging, and continued support and solidarity are essential to help the city and its residents recover and rebuild.
Kharkiv is also the destination for Ukrainian families on the front line or being evacuated from Vovchansk, for example. How is Kharkiv preparing to greet these evacuees? What assistance do they receive when they are evacuated to Kharkiv?
After this, you know about after the situation was sent near Volchansk, the Kharkiv Regional Military Administration, including our department, is assisting people who have fled from border areas. Together with volunteers and international organization, we register them in the IDP system, help them find together, and motivates us to keep pushing forward every day. Also, after almost every rocket strike, our leadership is Alexei Nihubov contact with humanitarian organization and help people to restore the window to fulfill their current needs. That's all.
Thank you so much. Just to add to that, Alan, if that's okay, I was wondering what equipment does the international community have access to that you are most in need of in Kharkiv? Of course, generators are very important. Do you feel the international community could support you more with other supplies, medical facilities, diagnostic equipment, or equipment for other critical infrastructure?
Yes, we need this every day, and I know about more charity foundation who help Kharkiv about the healthcare system, and what you say is I agree with you.
And do you feel there are any international communities, any agencies that are giving you more notable support, which you would like to see more of?
Really, it's military support. I know about, we speak about civil, about healthcare, but for the good living people, citizens in Kharkiv, we really need air defense system to protect Kharkiv from the Russian rockets, really.
So when we speak about that and what the international community can do and what our community can do here, we always speak about contacting our representatives and making requests for these things. So I would like to give you the chance to make that appeal to our listeners, what to say when contacting their political representatives in each country. Air defense, F-16s.
Can you replay, please? Sorry.
So I'm asking you, we always ask our listeners here to contact their representatives and advocate for Ukraine when speaking to our political representatives. So I'm asking you if there is anything you feel we should be saying to them other than just please more air defense.
It's really generators, more generators for our infrastructure, social and healthcare. It's really a need now for protect Kharkiv, to protect our social institutes.
Thank you so much. Make do that, please, everybody, whether you're in the UK, where I am, or in any country, please make these representations when you contact your representatives. It's really, really important that we continue to do that, I think, all across the world. Right, Alan?
It's vitally important to be in touch with your elected officials and demanding that they provide more support to Ukraine, all the military support that Ukraine needs to defeat Russia, to defeat Russia totally. Konstantin, without violating operational security, I saw reports this morning of the Russians holding about 100 Ukrainian residents captive in Vovchansk, essentially holding them as hostages. Can you give us an update about the situation in Vovchansk, the current status of the intense fighting there?
I know about situation with citizens, with civilian people, but I can't comment. It's because today we speak about the governor and the MriyaReport. So it can be only my position as a people, as a human, but about the situation in Volchansk, it's very hard today. Russia wants to occupy our territory, and our defense soldiers can stay now, and when they are stay in the Volchansk, we can live in Kharkiv, in Kharkiv.
Oh, have we lost?
Sorry. In free Kharkiv, some bad international connect, and we can live in free Kharkiv now. It's very good, and we are a lot of thanks to our army.
Thank you, Konstantin. You know, the Russians use a lot of propaganda and disinformation to try to create a panic. They've failed, of course, in Kharkiv, but the Russians claim that they could surround Kharkiv, that they could actually take the city of Kharkiv in just a few days. How did you respond to this Russian disinformation? How do you keep the residents of Kharkiv up to date with factual information?
So about the occupied of the city Kharkiv, I think it's false because we know that it's not really now, and it's not really at 24th of February and 2022. Yes, it's not true information, and our army stay brave now, and we help army every day and help people too. And don't hear this information, don't like this information. Yes, I know about propaganda of Russian Federation. Yes, it's have, but really Kharkiv stay, and Kharkiv only in Ukraine.
I'd like to go back to you, Tracy, and also invite Lita into the conversation here. Konstantin, and thank you very much for those answers.
I'd like to just mention, Konstantina, if you need anything interpreted, I can translate if there's any nuance in a question that you might need, I can tell you in Ukrainian.
Thank you. No, thank you. I hear it's okay.
Great. So we have a little bit of an update, which I did tell Konstantin earlier that the first 3 generators are being prepared as we speak in Western Ukraine and 100% checked and getting ready. And we have a sneak peek photo, which I think Alan has put up in the nest. There they are, 2 of them, 2 of the 3 in the picture. With a little bit of more of a close-up so that everyone can see the MriyaReport plaque on there, this metallic plaque. So that is really exciting to see, and that will be heading out this week to a very important healthcare facility in Kharkiv.
Thank you so much, Leader. That's absolutely wonderful news. That really fills my heart to know this, and possibly everybody else here too. I've just put that in the nest for you all to have a look at. So please go ahead and share that, because all you wonderful people here at this community have raised funds for this generator, and we are continuing to do more. These are the incredibly wonderful things that we have the privilege to be able to help with in a very small way. So if you are able to do that and you've not contributed already, please consider clicking on the second post in the nest, where you will see a link to make a payment for a donation. We all make donations that we can afford, so please just share your disposable income. If you would like to give up some luxuries to make a donation, we would not mind this. I am making a donation myself today, of course, as well as many of us here do, and it's absolutely wonderful to get that update, Leader. Are you able to tell us what type of facility they, without of course breaking operational security, that they may be able to supply?
Well, after many consultations, the facility that we've selected together with the Kharkiv Oblast administration is a highly critical one for the infrastructure in general and for healthcare. So we can't disclose which one it is, but it affects everything. So it's super important one, and we're really pleased.
I think I'm next on the mic. My name is Stefko from Toronto. Am I on, or it's my first time on the report?
Hello, welcome. It's very nice to have you here. Yes, we usually raise our hands, but if you do not have to do that, I of course allow you to just please go ahead. Welcome and thank you.
First of all, this is my first time, and I'm a technological Luddite, so I apologize for that. My name on our solar generating project for a hospital previously. I'm the chair of a fund that does technology and startup kind of funding for Ukrainian, both military and humanitarian projects. It's a small fund, but we're usually the first ones in to get projects going. My committee is absolutely thrilled with what we've, with our small contribution and the ongoing positive results that because Lida keeps us posted in regards to the units that we donated and how they're doing in a hospital ward. I'm a high-tech headhunter, and I see this project as something which would be of huge value to Ukraine from the point of view that whatever gets destroyed from a former Soviet technology, the infrastructure is being destroyed. We will be seeing a technology leapfrog into undistributed, localized electrical grids that'll be much more malleable and less subject to destruction by the Russians. I'm offering a challenge right now, a personal challenge to whomever's listening. Match me to $500 towards this fundraising project. If we raise the $500 by Friday, I'll toss in another 500. So 500 to match. We hit that number, and there'll be another 500 to go on top of that.
Wow, thank you so much. That's so generous. So you heard everybody. Get your hands in your pockets, your wallets, your purses. Get out your spare cash because we now have a challenge, a $500 match, which if is raised by Friday will also be another $500. That is so very generous of you, and thank you so much. Please go ahead, leader. Did you want to add something, leader?
Oh, I thought you were saying Linda. Sorry. Thank you so much, Stefko. That's so generous. And I wanted to just elaborate a little bit on what Stefko was saying earlier. I had a sound glitch, so I'm not sure if you said it, but the Mykolaiv hospital has had the sun kits for a while now, and that has been super important there in the region because many of the people who are forced to flee Kherson from the constant bombardments there, another frontline city as Kharkiv is now as well, many of them moved to Mykolaiv, and so did many of the doctors, the specialist doctors and surgeons. So that particular facility is supplying all kinds of healthcare up and down and running operating rooms and ICU rooms on these sun kits. Just to fill in a little bit of detail there for everybody.
Thank you so much, leader. We really appreciate that. Raouf, welcome. Please go ahead. Raouf, you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. First of all, good evening, everyone, and good to see you, Tracy, Alan, and others. And I welcoming to your guests, Lydia and Konstantin. And I think that important guest from on the ground, that very critical situation in Kharkiv, very critical situation in Kharkiv region, very bad situation now, because in Kharkiv is a lack of air defense system, and is a lack of electricity in the Kharkiv. It's 2 weeks ago I talking with my friend from Kharkiv, and I'm asking about what's happening in the Kharkiv. He said that situation is difficult, but it's difficult, but it's not critical. You're contrary. But I want to ask that, Konstantin, what the situation now in the Kharkiv now? I mean, how much helping that Ukraine government and your volunteer organization, NGOs, Kharkiv regional administration, it doesn't matter for helping for Kharkiv. And do you think that Kharkiv need to Patriot air defense? And what's the situation with fortification defense zone? Thank you.
That was a lot of questions there. Are you able to answer, Konstantin?
Okay, I can start about that many residents rely on electricity for heating and cooking now. It's about situation, power cuts leave them without the means to keep their homes warm. Especially it was a problem for March when temperature was below 0 Celsius. Without power, there can be interruptions in the water supply, affecting both drinking water and sanitation. Routine activities like charging device, using home appliances, and maintaining a normal daily routine become challenging, really. Also, it affects transport infrastructure. Subway is the main transport for Kharkiv people, and it can be operated during power outages. And also, our trams and trolleys don't work. About situation with the partnerships, how the government help Kharkiv and volunteers, it's very powerful because we making all work really to help Kharkiv. It's evacuation. I said about this in my speech that we are working in the holidays, and Saturday every day we are working to help people, IDPs. And about fortifications, I can't comment because I don't have the access. Yes, actual information. I know that our Kharkiv military administration is building this, but I can comment that have some nuance and you have some information about this. I exactly say that it's okay with fortification in the Kharkiv region.
Did that answer your question, Rauf?
Thank you. I just want something in Konstantin that I am from Azerbaijan. I'm state that glory to Ukraine, slava
Rauf,
героям.
super.
Рад видеть вас. Берегите себя.
Назаєм, дякую. Я
Вітаю.
вас також.
Вітаю.
Rauf, I think we can continue our speech about Kharkiv, about your country in the other time, not on live. It's a very good idea, and I am welcome to speak with you, really.
Thank you,
Thank you
Konstantin.
Thank you so much, everybody. That's wonderful. I just wonder if you could maybe speak about the way Kharkiv administration helps residents. You spoke a little bit before about some of the things that you do. I see very good public messaging and a very good support system for evacuating residents. Also, you are increasing invincibility points, I see, in Kharkiv.
No, I think help IDPs and it's money for IDPs. Some organization partnership help IDPs. It's taking money for these people and take some places where they can live now for some period. And Kharkiv military, it's working for this every day with the funds and with coordination humanitarian center. What I mean in the dialogue.
Did we lose audio?
I think we're good.
I think we're good, Tracy. Konstantin, another quick question for you about refrigeration. In Kharkiv, refrigeration is important, obviously, for individual families, but also for supermarkets and for hospitals. It has to preserve food, to preserve medicine, blood, plasma, etc. Is there a special need for refrigeration and refrigeration units? How is that part of the critical infrastructure being addressed?
So I think it's a really hard question for me, but I can say that about markets, right? You say all about our department, how we help, right? So our department help to business really too, not only critical infrastructure. We help the business to give him as generators. From the foundations, the charity foundation, who can really help to not only people, it's mean not in critical infrastructure, not healthcare, but they can help the business. We have some cases from another countries when this country's charity fund call to our department and said, did you need the generator for business to help business work now at Kharkiv at this hard time? And we say, yes, of course. We have more than 200 kilowatts generators for this business, and business still work. And really in Kharkiv, it's very hard with business now, but we help every day. So about the really needs on the critical infrastructure, it's first of all, it's really generators. That the critical infrastructure for people need to work every day, and this is only one. It needs is generators to work in.
Lita, please.
Thank you. I want to point out something about the new use energy generators, because they are absolutely silent and don't create fumes. They are safe for any indoor use, and also to really reduce the stress level out on the street as well. Can you imagine being at an outdoor cafe and having, a semblance of a moment of, normalcy and peace, and then you have this loud, smelly generator next to you? So I would like to offer to Konstantin that we can also take a look at that kind of a needs list, and maybe work with larger funders, as we hope that, and Heather said this the other day, that this push by MriyaReport can inspire others to do the same. And although the MriyaReport campaign is focusing on healthcare, there are all these other ways in which we can help the people of Kharkiv, and maybe we can find other donors to look at helping, food facilities, or places where, that silence is really appreciated. Like maybe there are babies around, like a daycare or something like this.
Please go ahead.
So I support Lida about the generators. It's right, and it's very comfortable because these generators, which come into Kharkiv, work from the sun.
Solar power.
Solar power, yeah, have a solar power, and it's very comfortable to charge this in a place where you're working now. It's first, and second, I want to say that I need to work to protect Kharkiv to some events today, and if I can, I go in and thank you for your support of Ukraine, for support of Kharkiv, and really, it's very good. It's very powerful for us, and very thank you that you help to us.
And a little funny note from Kharkiv. Yeah, the silent generators are our #1 priority, because when you are going, just walking through Kharkiv, and you hear this buzzing, like you can hear the generators like 1,000 bucks. So yeah, this is #1 priority for us. Thank you.
That's really good to know. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much. That is a very good insight to share, because it's something that I guess people here don't think about when you have to be exposed to noisy, smelly generators all the time. I wonder if you can speak about how easy these generators are for people to use once they are placed in Kharkiv. Paul from New Use Energy has told us about the digital display and how that helps the user understand the amount of power that is still available to use.
For sure. Yes, these are very turnkey and basically self setup, with just a tiny bit of instruction, and within a few minutes you have power. You don't have to use the solar panel at all, or all the time either, because there's battery storage in the device for power, so you can just have it set up and run your devices off of it for quite some time, depending on what you're running. So it, like you mentioned, it's easy, it's turnkey. The solar panel can also be farther away, which, depending on the situation and distances, it can even be up on a roof nearby, even as high as 4 stories high, because there are long cables available.
That's fantastic to know. You reminded me of something I saw, Leader, last year when Russia was attacking the critical energy infrastructure, people having to hang generators out of windows so that they can get power, because obviously you cannot have the traditional generators inside that burn fuel because of the fumes. So, of course, all these ways will help people to stop having to do things like this. And I was thinking about the resilience of Kharkiv and the way that these smaller generators can provide more invincibility points, making it safer for residents having to travel less distance to invincibility points, for example.
Absolutely. And I also understand that there's a schedule of scheduled outages as they ration power in Kharkiv and other cities in Ukraine as well. And maybe Konstantin could say a few words about that, how there's a schedule where people may or may not have power in their building for a period of time every day.
Yes, power outages are a thing in Kharkiv even right now, and some outages can be up to 8 hours a day, but it's not something very common in Kharkiv. I would say we stabilized the situation, and we don't have power like for 4 hours a day at max. But at the very beginning in March, it was a disaster because our people, our 700,000 abonnents, they didn't have any power for 2 days. And it was like a happiness for us to have it after 2 days, not after 3 or 4, like in our region. It was because of the harsh strikes, and we don't have any generators, any thermal power plants in our region now. So we are tossing some energy from other regions of Ukraine. So we don't have our generation of energy.
And also Ukraine is having to now import electricity from European countries where previously they were able to export that electricity.
Yes, we are lucky that we link that connection, before the war. So now we can have at least something. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we see the notices come from Ukrenego about the percentage of power that's available for Ukraine. I was reading yesterday how they explain how they share the power out across the country, but that does not always mean every area will have power. For example, one area may use more power than another area, and so therefore their time for having power would be shorter, for example. Could you explain this to listeners? Maybe I didn't explain very well, Leader.
No. It's we understand this, but we don't have much information about this. We can say that maybe it's because of the plants in our region. Like we are in the Kharkiv, in the very core, in 40 kilometers from the Russia, and we have to have the energy for plants to work, for our medical infrastructure for some time, and some Chernivtsi don't have to use this energy in this time. So maybe we have just more plants and more military units to power for.
Thank you so much for sharing these insights. Would you like to add anything here, Alan?
No, Tracy, I would like you and Lita to keep going.
Thank you. Go ahead, Lita.
Thank you. I just want to do a time check with our guests. Are you okay, or do you need to conclude this call, Kostya and your colleague?
Excuse me, can you repeat, please?
Please let us know when you need to go. We understand that your time is very valuable, and you have a crisis in your city. So I'm asking if you still have time to speak, or do you need to be going soon?
Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't have any time because we read on half an hour, and yeah, I know. And thank you very much for the attention, for the ability to speak, to provide the ability to speak to us and to be heard. So thank you very much, and we love you. Thank you.
We love you too. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us and for speaking with us live from Kharkiv. It's very much appreciated. Slava Ukraini.
Heroam Slava. And thank you.
Heroam
Thank you
Slava.
so much.
Thank you so much, of course, to you both. It's been an absolute privilege and an honour to speak with you today. We hope that we can speak with you again, and we hope our community can continue to support Ukraine and Ukrainians. We have a world community here at MriyaReport, and we like to do everything that we can, whether that's donating or sharing information. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. Thank you so much as well. You are always working extremely hard, and we very much appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your wonderful hosting and for the questions from the audience. I can stay on a little bit longer.
Please do stay with us, Lita, if you can. And I would like to take a moment to draw everyone's attention to the second tweet in the nest. Give it a tap, follow the links to the donation page at MriyaReport. And it's especially timely for you to make a donation now because we have a generous matching promise from another listener here. He will match $500. So the next $500 will trigger another $500 on top of that. It means really, if you give a donation as small as $5 or $10, you're really contributing $10 or $20. If you can give a donation of $100, you're really contributing $200 thanks to this generous matching offer. So let's get to that $500 milestone today. That matching offer runs through the week, but it is triggered the moment we raise $500 more to help send these solar power generators to hospitals in Kharkiv. So please be just as generous as you possibly can. And thanks in advance for your donation today. Tracy? Well, Tracy must be busy in the background here. And Lita, this generous matching offer from a listener, he's actually with us at the moment, I think. I don't know if he would like to speak.
Actually, I think he thought that he had left, and like he mentioned, he's never done this before, and I was actually just sending him an instruction if he wants to conclude that and how to click to drop down to listener. I think he's here at the moment if he wants to say another few words. Stefko.
Coming through. Can you guys hear me? Sorry.
Yes, loud and clear.
Yes, this is a very valuable and important project in Kharkiv, and I see Lida's and Maria's initiative growing exponentially. I'd be more than happy to make that payment of $1,000 this afternoon. So if you can have your listeners take care of that, the money will be.
We are now having a little audio difficulty, but it's such a generous offer, and we thank you
If you
so
can hear
much.
me, I'll try this again.
Okay,
if
there
your
you go.
audience can match the $500 plus my top up, the money will be in the account today. I see this project growing exponentially with the solar generators.
Thank you so much, Stefko, and we'll help make that happen. Thank you so much.
it's only through the generosity of Maria's Report's listeners that Maria Report is able to help Ukraine. And in so many ways, thanks to your generosity, we have been able to provide critical help, not only in Kharkiv, but in Kherson, on the front lines, delivering all kinds of humanitarian and non-lethal aid. For example, equipment to soldiers on the front line, including uh, protection for their ears, tactical gear that helps them protect themselves from shrapnel, for example. It's thanks to your generosity that Maria Report is able to deliver help to Ukraine, which we try to do every single week. Again, thanks to your generosity. Tracy?
Apologies, Alan. I'm having a number of technical difficulties, and I'm also at the same time trying to post my evidence of my donation that I just made. So apologies for that. I was in the background cheating. I was going to make a $10 donation today anyway, so I'm just fessing up and telling you that anyway. Well, actually, it's $11 because I added the extra little part to cover the cost of the transaction there. And so if you can match me in my small $10 payments that I can afford to make, then please go ahead and do so, because your donations will be matched by that extremely generous offer. So get your cash out, Alan. That's what I say.
Lita, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to reflect on some of the things that Konstantin, or Kostya for short, was saying. How do you feel about that, Alan? Maybe we can review a little bit about that, and I have one insight I'd like to share on that.
I didn't quite catch that, Lita. I'm sorry.
I wanted to reflect a bit on some of the information we learned from Konstantin just now, Kostya, and just comment on that a little bit. So one of the things that he mentioned is that one of their key activities has been support of IDPs from the hotspots out in the Kharkiv Oblast, Vovchansk, Kupiansk. Families have come in, and I'm taking that to heart, and because as we select the next recipient from this campaign, we already have someone in mind, and this information absolutely reinforces our thinking on it. So we have a candidate in mind that is every day treating children, most of whom are IDPs, in a healthcare facility for children only.
Well, I think one thing that I took away from the conversation with Konstantin and his associates in Kharkiv is how the spirit of the residents of Kharkiv has never ever failed. It's never been broken, regardless of what the Russians do every single day. I was especially listening about how first responders, emergency workers, now protect themselves as much as possible from Russian double tap strikes. And just so listeners know what a double tap is, Russia will launch a missile at a target in Kharkiv, wait just long enough for emergency workers and first responders to get to that site, and then launch a second missile intended to kill emergency workers in Kharkiv. Of course, they use this double tap method all across Ukraine. By the way, it's a war crime.
100%. That's a war crime. It's an atrocity. medical teams at the front are also supposed to be exempt from such attacks, and it's atrocious and horrific to think that, you know, half an hour after a strike on a building in a city center, that the enemy is going to go ahead and strike it again when they expect the first responders to be there. Horrible.
Tracy, are you back with us? I just wanted to check in with you.
Can you hear me, Alan? I'm having terrible rubber banding on my audio.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear, but if you need to take steps to fix that audio connection, please go right ahead and do that. But right now, I do hear you loud and clear. Yeah, you know, Lita and Tracy, I did ask a little bit about Vovchansk, and I understand because of the current situation in Vovchansk, intense fighting. Konstantin really couldn't provide much of an answer about what the current situation of Vovchansk is, but there are reports that about 100 residents of Vovchansk are being held captive or held hostage in Vovchansk by the Russians, and the other reports I've seen, Tracy and Lita, indicate that Ukrainian forces control about 60% of Vovchansk. You know, we have also, unfortunately, seen photographic evidence of more Russian war crimes. The executions of civilians in Vovchansk. Russians have killed in cold blood. We don't know how many civilians in Vovchansk, but their dead bodies, including a man in a wheelchair, are visible on the streets of Vovchansk, where the Russians have advanced. We only know that about 100 civilians, as I say, are currently held captive, really held hostage by the Russians, probably herded into a basement somewhere in Vovchansk. Certainly mistreated. There's no question about that. But again, this is a war crime being committed in full view of the world by Russian soldiers in Vovchansk. Just a quick public service announcement here. I saw a warning flash across my phone that the host is having connection issues. So sometimes that comes before a crash, but please do stay with us. You know, Lita, the other thing that struck me about Konstantin was how he talked about helping individual businesses, and you know, only by helping businesses in Kharkiv, for example, you know, supermarkets that need refrigeration, or even a business like a sidewalk cafe or a restaurant. It's only by helping those businesses remain open that residents of Kharkiv can maintain a sense of